And amazing, he started on time for once. How can this be? Grail was later than usual. We actually started at 7 p.m. Eastern on the dot, and I had time to mess with the configuration for virtually all of my settings, most especially the mic, so hopefully it sounds just a skosh better than Wednesday, too. My dear friends, thinkers, and gamers, welcome back to Tales of Praxis on a fine Friday evening. I'm your host, Aaron Suduko, the founder of withatterriblefate.com, your first and final source for all literary studies and indeed celebrations of video games. If you have grown up loving video games and their stories in the way that others love novels and films, you found your home. Welcome to it. We're so excited to dive into what makes this medium so special with all of you. Grail, I wouldn't say it sounded bad, but let's put it this way. When my buddy Dan was kind enough to give me the new mic as a kind of early Christmas present and set it up for me while he was here, he set it up in a configuration that was meant for multiple people, since he and Matt and I were all here and doing the stream. So I just needed to jigger with the settings a little bit to make it hopefully better suited to my specific voice and only my voice. So that mostly involved messing with the gain and moving the boom a little bit. And I'm rolling the dice, removing the the sound shield that I had before because it was messing with my lighting a bit. And my guess is with the quality of this new mic, it wouldn't make much of a difference anyways, but we can continue to play around and get data and see what makes a difference and not. If you're just joining the stream for the first time, don't know what Tales of Praxis is all about, unlike our dear mainstays such as Grail, it's a series which I started for With a Terrible Fate probably eight, 9 months ago now. I'm sure we'll do something special for the year anniversary because I have no doubt we'll still be doing this at that point. But I'm a philosopher of games and specifically of video game storytelling. And as I've come into my own thinking about games and studying them and publishing on them, I've had occasion to return to a series that made a big difference to me growing up as someone who loved video games and just as a person and as someone who would be drawn to philosophy, namely it's a Friday. I'm still waking up. Bandai Namco's amazing series of JRPGs, the Tales of series. Tales of Symphonia was my first ever video game story for all intents and purposes, and it drew me into the medium in a way that I still carry with me today. And so when Bandai Namco announced that they were remastering and re-releasing it last year, I decided, hey, what a great opportunity to revisit this series that shaped me when I was growing up, as well as so many others, and to replay those games that were formative for me, to play through the Tales games that I missed since I didn't play every single one as they were coming out, and to think about how they shaped me and also how they shaped the storytelling of video games, both within the series in terms of the language that they developed for wrestling with deeply human themes of how we are to understand ourselves and our communities and to make the impact that we want to within the world, but also even the storytelling language of video games beyond the Tales series, because I think their impact ripples throughout video game storytelling more broadly, as I've been arguing and directing our attention to over the better part of a year at this point. The series takes two main forms. One is this wonderful live book club that we get together 3 times a week on Twitch to do with the Real Life JRPG Party, which consists of myself and anyone who wants to join in the chat, whether you're an encyclopedic expert on the Tales series, such as our friend Grail here, or if you've maybe just played 1 or 2 of them, or indeed, even if you just love the storytelling of video games and you've never played one, but you want to talk about what makes this medium so great and you want to get to know a great series for the first time. Everyone is welcome. And we've been studying a range of these Tales games together since Tales of Symphonia. Most recently, Tales of Grace's F, where we are now on the 4th act with probably still a good ways to go, but excitingly for me, as I've talked about before, in the midst of some content which I've actually never played before. I played Tales of Graces growing up, but I, for some reason that escapes me, stopped by the time Act 4 started, which was what they added after the base game and its kind of main conclusion. So I've been having a great time with it. I'm excited to see where it goes next. Yes, Grail is obviously the main character. Look, better you than me, buddy. I resonate more with the side characters anyway, so I will gladly cede that title to you. You be Asbel, I'll be Malik. We'll all have a day of it. It'll be great. The other horn of the series, beyond these great conversations that we've been having, unpacking the magic of these games in real time, have been my analytical articles, which I've been publishing on withtheterriblefate.com. And if you're not familiar with the Terrible Fate, that's really what the publication grew out of, was long form written content. And so while you can find us now in a variety of media, from articles to podcasts to lectures to streams, the long form analytical article, sometimes very long form, is where we, and I especially, are most at home. So if you want more granular dissections of what makes these games so special and how the language of their storytelling works, either in individual character studies in a single game or comparative analyses of a couple games, or really anything in between, I've published on a handful of the games at this point, but now that it's turned to a new year and my attention is more squarely refocused on the series, you can expect a wealth of new articles soon. And my little teaser for that is that I spent the better part of this day in research mode for the article that I teased last time on Tales of Fantasia. So I already have found myself going down a rabbit hole of the philosophy of science and quantum physics and time. I am going to try my best to pull myself out of that rabbit hole before I get to writing, so that it doesn't turn into a full-blown research project of the kind that I want to do, but can be a bit more of a self-contained meditation to celebrate the very beginning of the Tales series before we move on to some more of the many games I have not yet published on in written form. And I'm looking forward to those as much as anything as a way of catalyzing some more great conversations on the stream. That's been one of my favorite parts of the stream to date, is not only working through these games together, but also discussing and dissecting the views that I'm putting together and sharing in these articles. It's a wonderful flywheel, you see, all of these different parts of video game analysis working together. Okay, but main character or main antagonist, Grail? I don't think you can have it both ways. So then, am I the Asbel to your Richard? Like, we gotta settle this relationship before we go on in the Tales of Grace's storyline. Oh, outside in a blizzard. My goodness. I hope you're getting warm now at least. That sounds rough. What was the temperature? Was it at least a warmish blizzard, or was it bitingly cold as well? Hope you're taking care of yourself. Yeah, retail is a hell of a drug, buddy. Seriously, be well, and don't go to the mat for your job too much. Seriously. What else do I have for you all on a fine Friday? Working on that Tales of Fantasia article. I'm sure I'll have a little more to tease about that as it comes together, but that'll be my weekend too. Have some more exciting things in the works. Oh, and if you didn't catch it on Wednesday or in my tweets about it over the last couple of weeks, I went to Japan with my friend and colleague Dan Hughes, whom I already mentioned. So as I promised, the next few streams are probably going to be a bit more of show and tell of some of the things that I collected from my various adventures over there. And then also interspersed throughout the streams, I'm sure, as was the case last time, will be some more anecdotes of my time there as it pops up in relevant ways as we're working through Tales of Graces, because I definitely had more than one aha moment while I was over there in terms of seeing the country and learning about its history through Dan's East Asian studies background that made me think about various aspects of the Tales series in some slightly different ways. Hey, Burst, welcome back. Good to see you. It's been a minute, my friend. So nice to have you back. Yeah, that's still cold. I mean, I think I mentioned last time, but I came into, I think, minus 13 Fahrenheit on my car's thermostat when I got into Denver's airport. So it's all relative, but that is still not fun. So in the spirit of getting going a little bit more quickly on a Friday, but also celebrating some Tales things, gonna plug away at some show and tell. Actually, you might or might not have noticed, I'm already doing a little bit of show and tell, because if you can't tell, this shirt was actually one of my acquisitions. If you're not familiar with Bloodborne, this is a shirt highlighting the messengers and the lanterns who guide your way in various forms throughout your nightmarish adventures in Miyazaki's well-praised and well-regarded nightmarish Cthulhu-esque horror show that is Bloodborne. So we found this company while we were over there, which is featured in a few of the main stores in Akihabara, called Torch, that has done a few really great collaborations with From Software's IPs, and their Bloodborne shirts especially were some of the finest pieces of apparel that I've seen in a long time. So you'll probably see me sporting a few more of those before the next few streams are out. So that's one. Then I'm going to go ahead and already break the seal and reset the timer on time since last Xenoblade mention, because I wanted to show a few things that I got, which I'm not even sure what they look like inside, to be honest, but I saw them and I had a feeling they would be pretty cool. So I picked them up. It's something marked as Xenoblade Definitive Edition with a symbol of the Monado on the outside. And from looking at a different shop, I think it's a really nicely finished little model of Shulk's Monado from the first game. But let's open it up and see what we have inside. If I can open this box. Oh yeah, look at that. It's I think it's something like a very fancy keychain. Well, I won't bother taking it out because I can just show you. It's kind of nice in the display. But yes, a little metallic version of the Monado. So you know me, you know my deep love and appreciation of the Xenoblade Chronicles games. And if you've been following Tales of Praxis, you know my deep love and appreciation of magic swords and their narrative meanings. See my last 40,000 word article comparing Dane Nomos with Dimlos from various Tales games. So that's wonderful. I'm going to have to find a place of honor for that. I, too, am really feeling it. How can you not be really feeling it with a sword like that? I know, the final boss is the packaging. Thank you for making me feel seen. I always feel like an idiot when I try to open the simplest packaging, but I'm glad it's not just me. So the other one, which was complementing that, and now we have a good sense of what'll be inside, but it's still fun to do the unboxing, was for Xenoblade 3, Noah's Blade. And interestingly enough, maybe they're just starting the collection and releasing it piecemeal because, as you might guess, I looked high and low for a copy of the Aegis sword from Xenoblade 2 after I saw these, but so far it only seems to be a set of these two. Oh, but my goodness, look at this. I think this even looks cooler than the Monado, if I'm being honest. Obviously, maybe I'm a little bit biased because I feel a certain way about Xenoblade Chronicles 3, but look at that. Noah's Blade in all its glory. And I think, well, kind of. You can kind of see Lucky 7 sticking out from the sheath of the blade. Not quite as well defined as I thought it might be, but still. Oh, what a beautiful, beautiful picture then. Only the cool ones. No, come on. You can't discount the value of the Aegis swords. There's two of them, and they're both awesome. Oh, move the mic back. There we go. All right, thank you, Grail. That's the kind of feedback I was hoping for. There. So I moved it back a skosh. Let me know whether or not that fixed the issue. So those are the non-Tails things, but I saved the best, or I guess the most relevant, for last, because also I went to the Tails official store, as I think it was you, Grail, were hinting at last time. So you already knew about this, I guess, but funny enough, even though I've spent the better part of a year researching and studying and publishing on the Tales series, and even though I was planning this big adventure to Japan, I didn't bother to look beforehand to see if there was anything like an official Tales store. I just figured, I'll discover what's there to be seen or not once I get there. And so truly in the middle of Akihabara, which if you don't know is basically, for all intents and purposes, the pop culture district in Tokyo, where every store you walk into has, a bunch of different collectibles for every Japanese IP you've ever loved. So we stumbled into a store that I didn't know existed after walking into a bunch of secondhand and retro places. And this one was basically the official store for Square Enix and Bandai Namco, and there was some Nintendo there. It was like all of the big mainline companies you would hope to find in Japan all had a little presence in this store, but it wasn't really dedicated to one of them or another. But I walked in the door, and I swear to God, it if you didn't think the store was meant for me, picture this. I walk in, the very first display with the music of the games blaring out is a Xenoblade Chronicles display, which is where I got a decent amount of the Xenoblade Chronicles stuff that I found on the trip. And then I see in the corner a sign that says, "This way to the official Tales of store." So I said to Dan, "You go find whatever you need to. I'm going to disappear up there for a couple hours." So I found the store. It was interesting. I wish I could paint a picture of it. You can probably find it online because most of the stores in Aki are several floors. That's the way that they're laid out in these kind of tall and relatively narrow buildings. And the Tales store itself was on the second floor up an escalator. And there were great banners of different characters from the various games. I think especially Tales of Zestiria on the walls as you were going up the escalator. But then the Tales store itself, funny enough, was only like a small corner in the back of the second floor. And honestly, as I think about my various adventures in Japan, I think some of to me, the coolest stuff that I found that pertained to the Tales series was stuff that I found in secondhand shops, like that premium box for Tales of Eternia, which I shared on Wednesday's stream. But I did feel totally at home and seen and validated in the official Tales store. And there was plenty of cool stuff there that I hadn't really seen anywhere else. So I'm going to share with you. I think I got together all of my gets from the Tales store, and we can do a little unboxing and exploration of that before we dive into Tales of Graces. So the first thing, because I am who I am, got a bunch of plushies. If you don't know, I'm a quieter but very huge plushie nerd with my various gaming obsessions. So we got Renwell and Law from Tales of Arise, and we could take them out of this packaging. This will hopefully be easier. Famous last words. Oh, not bad. This packaging I can live with. So, little Renwell. There was also a statue of her, but I figured if I go down the statue rabbit hole, I'm never coming out, especially in Japan where there's a statue for every major and minor character you've ever seen. So I didn't bring home any further statues as such. We got our boy Law. But mostly Law, right, Grail? We know where you stand. Well, I guess especially while we're working through Graces and he's also doing double duty voicing Asbel. I guess that's an appropriate response. And our boy Dohalim, the senior citizen of the group at a ripe old age of 28, although I guess 29 now in Beyond the Dawn. Our Renin Lord. And of course, where you have a Renin Lord, you have to have his knight and protector, who by the end of the game we all know becomes much more than that. Kisara. I kind of wish she had her shield. She does not, but still pretty excellent. Well, Grail, I'm reminding you, any experiences you have and also any amazing stuff, including statues that you pick up on that con, I'm expecting you to share. I also have to share with you, I keep forgetting, but I'm not even going to tease this, but I took a picture specifically with you in mind while I was in Japan, so I'll shoot you that on Patreon or something after this if I remember. Shion, ponytail and all, in her fine Renin regalia. You might remember how important clothes are to the Renins, and specifically to Shion if you remember the opening sequences of Tales of Arise. And last, but most certainly not least, our fine hero, Alphen, with the iron mask shattered, but not fully removed from his face. So the boy knows his name, but he does not remember his past. So a whole little collection of the main crew from Tales of Arise in plush form. I'm sure I'll show you the other plushies I got at some point, because I also hit the Pokemon store, and it's physically impossible to do that without bringing home a few adorable Pokemon with you. So I'm probably going to have to find a whole new place in my apartment just for those. This was cool. Speaking of little pieces of Tales merch I didn't know existed, one of the little glyph embossed wristbands that Eisen has in Tales of Berseria. So I don't know how well that's coming through, but it has a little tag that says Eisen on it, and then a bunch of little markings on each of the beads. So a nice little way to evoke our anti-hero, the Reaper, on his journeys through the desolation. Yeah, they are pretty kawaii figures, aren't they, Burst? That's exactly the perfect word for it. Yes, if I remember correctly, Grail, Shion's thinking was even out-of-date Renin fashion blows anything available on Dana out of the water, so I'll settle for it. So yes, certainly out of date. I know I'm telling you, some amazing finds and stuff that I really hadn't seen anywhere else. Like this, for instance, a thing I wouldn't have known existed had I not seen it. Little like nice quality clips for like your belt or backpack or such, stylized in the spirit of the characters from Tales of Vesperia. So you have one for Rokuro with his outfit on it, and one for Aizen with his outfit, and one for Velvet with her outfit. Cleavage and all, for whatever that is worth. So I couldn't not pick that up once I saw it. And then finally, this is fun, and this is probably the most unboxing pertinent thing that I've shown you so far. So again, depending on how far down the Tales rabbit hole you are, you may or may not know that they have, I think it's an annual thing, but if not, pretty regularly, these Tales of Fandom cons in Japan. And they'll put out a lot of fun, campy, alternate outfit, alternate themed stuff that celebrate the characters from a range of the games that are basically only available at these venues. Tales Fest, yes, thank you, Grail. And so if you remember, I think it was around the end of the Tales of Berseria stream, to celebrate that and to celebrate the publication of my article on Tales of Vesperia and Tales of Destiny, I brought out some pins that showed characters from those games in like opera performance clothing with different instruments that they were playing. And that was a set that was only available at one of these Tales Fests that I found on eBay. So one of the really cool things about this little official Tales shop is that they've aggregated a bunch of the little gotcha style collectibles that are sealed in little foil pouches like this. And I think they're little different things like some stickers, some coasters, but things that feature different characters from the games. So I didn't buy literally every one that was possible, but what I did was I bought, I think, one from every Tales Fest set that they had available. As you can see, and I can prove, see, the seals haven't been broken. I really didn't open any of them because I wanted to open them with my fellow Praxis gamers. So I don't know what I got, but we'll find out together. Maybe we'll recognize some characters. Grail, you can probably be a good guide for the characters I don't recognize, but hopefully I'll recognize a decent number of them. I know, yeah, so often, and that's why, like, there was a lot of the content at the Tales shop that I didn't even get or look at because a lot of it was for the mobile spin-offs and stuff like that. Tales of Rays, I think it's called. So a lot of the small shop was focused on that, which was part of why I don't want to say I was underwhelmed because I mean it's an official Tales shop. Of course, I'm going to be happy and have my mind blown, but it wasn't quite the distribution of stuff that I was expecting. That's right. Release the beast. All right, so this is number one. What do we have here? It feels like a coaster. Oh, no, this is beautiful. This already makes me feel like I should have gotten more of these. But look at that. It's like, it's a glossy, somewhat bendable coaster of a meal / Ratatosk, if you know what's up, with a little star pendant on it. Oh, that's beautiful. I love that. I love that it's an homage to a meal, excuse me. I've already been planning some more Dawn of the New World content because there are some pertinent ideas that are swirling around in my head. That's a great note to start on. That's a funny thing. Like, I don't know if I mentioned this last time, but another adventure that I really enjoyed that we had was going not once, but twice to Square Enix's official cafe, which was very cool. The first time it was all decked out and themed in honor of Dragon Quest, and the second time for Octopath Traveler 2. And it was a delicious cafe with great food and drinks, but they also had gotcha-style coasters that were really high-quality works of art from the different games. So I didn't know the collectible coasters was a thing, but it's huge over there for whatever reason. All right, number two. This is one of the big ones, for whatever that's worth. Oh, all right. It's a... I don't know what you would call this. It's not quite a coaster. It's almost like just a thick, high-quality piece of cardstock with our boy Saray on it, the shepherd. Not an alternate outfit or anything, but just a nice celebration of the hero who made a new era possible in the desolation following the efforts of Velvet. And almost with a little a cursive styling of his name in the corner as if it were signed by him, which is kind of fun. Got Saray right there. All right. 2 down. Oh man, I'm going to be gaming with so much junk on my desk during this this stream, but it's totally worth it to share this experience with you. All right, this is another of the big ones, and then we have a bunch of small ones to enjoy. I think it's the same style as the one that I just opened of Saray. All right, so this is one you might know, Grail. I don't. It's not from a game I've played. But thanks to it being signed, I can at least tell you that his name is Caius Qualls. Boy flexing and looking very confident with some main hero energy over here. Tales of Tempest. All right, Tales of the Tempest. One that came up on our last stream when we got that cameo Bladerang for Malik. So good timing for that. It's only going to incentivize me to find some way to either quickly learn Japanese or get some kind of ad hoc translation of Tales of the Tempest. This is one of the small ones here. Oh my goodness, it has paper packaging around it. How much more intense can we get, Japan? Oh, fun. It's a keychain with a little stand, so you can display it if you want to, of the King Owl from the Owl Forest. Another Tales of Arise call out. Oh, any excuse to have more of those fine owls in my life, I'll tell you. And he's got a little, it almost looks like an Egyptian outfit of him because he has a little golden eagle on his chest and he's holding a kind of Egyptian or maybe Dohalim stylized scepter. Dohalim also aesthetically borrowing a lot from Egypt. Well, I love that. I forget if I mentioned, but I got a plushie of Hoodle, which Evie promptly destroyed out of jealousy, so I'm glad to have more owl-themed memorabilia in my life for the Tales collection. All right, we have 3 more. This is another one of the small ones here. Oh, okay. This is a like a beautiful piece of glass that is embossed and that you can see through, almost in the style of like an Instagram post from the Tales of Festival last year. So the most recent one from, I want to say Tales of Rebirth. And I know that just because I found the Japanese copy and I also bought it. Spoiler alert for a later show and tell. But another character whom I hope to someday get to know better, but I don't have experience with yet. All the more reason to get even further into it, as is the entire purpose of Tales of Praxis. A beautiful piece of glass. There you go. Nothing like that. I will definitely let you know, Grail. Ooh, and if we could play through one for the first time together, wouldn't that be cool when it was new to both of us? I don't think we've had that experience yet. Oh, that's not true. You hadn't played Alicia's Story, right? I think that was new for both of us. And then, of course, Beyond the Dawn. But for a mainline Mothership title and all of that, I don't think we've had that. Because of no reason. Yeah, that could only end well, right? All right, got another piece of glass here. Oh, all right. This is one that I know from my all too recent adventures. As of literally last night, our boy Core Meteor from Tales of Hearts. And if you're a Tales fan and he doesn't look familiar to you, you owe it to yourself to find a way to play Tales of Hearts, because I will just say, without going down the rabbit hole too prematurely, I am continuing on my way through it and absolutely loving it. So underrepresented, and hopefully once I start publishing on it, I can try to make a push to make it more represented at least. My man, yeah, the man, the myth, the legend, isn't that right? All right, last one, folks. I would say let's wish for good pull juju, but I don't think we can really have a bad outcome here with any of the options. Even if it's one I don't know, it's just incentive to better get to know. Which is the case. This is, I'm trying to even read the name. It looks like Ixneve or something like that. A gentleman who's not familiar to me. Maybe you know where he hails from, Grail. You know, it's funny you say that about Ixis. Oh, got it. The main character of Raise. Well, there you go. Ending where we began with the talk of mobile games and spin-offs. Well, there you go. And honestly, for all of the emphasis they've given it, I would have felt like I didn't do the series justice if I didn't make it away from Japan with at least one Raise-related thing. So there you go. I got one and only one, which seems fitting and appropriate. Ah, how's that for a haul? Oh, I loved that, and I love being able to open that with all of you. A fun Tales of Praxis tie-in to the Japan adventures. You know, it's funny you say that about Core looking like such a generic Tales protagonist, because I might or might not have mentioned that when I was doling out all of the symphony-themed pins, because there was exactly one character whom I couldn't identify, and it turns out it's Core. And I was like looking at him and even trying to match him to the characters from the games I hadn't played, and I was saying to myself, man, he looks like he could be anyone. How am I supposed to tell who this is? He's so generic. But now, I mean, after staring at his character model for probably 10 or 15 hours, like, of course I recognize him, but certainly less distinctive from someone like Emil or Asbel or Velvet, or any of our more distinguished main characters. All right, my friends. Well, rest assured, the show and tell will continue. I got plenty more to share as long as we're continuing to enjoy it. But I think one of the many things that was reinforced for me on this most recent adventure to Japan was that it really can be just as rewarding to appreciate the broader culture of the country and the context from which these games emerge as it is to sit down and do close readings of them as texts unto themselves, which is most of what I do. But seeing it from the broader real world cultural perspective was really, really neat as well. In fact, Grail, I don't know if I mentioned this last time when we were talking about Tales of Hearts, so excuse the rerun if I'm repeating myself, but without spoilers, because I want everyone to have an opportunity to play Hearts. One of the things that was really neat in terms of timing for playing that was it turns out it seems to really directly be concerned with a lot of the Japanese history that actually Dan studied in his research program in undergrad, that era of Japan when the country was kind of united by force for the first time in a long time after the Warring States period. So I won't say more than that, but if you know, you know, with regard to both Japan and Tales of Hearts. So excited to be playing that right now. I'm as interested in Hisui as I am in main characters most of the time. So even if he's technically a supporting character, I'm with you. He definitely has that energy. All right, my dear friends. Well, hey, that was about half the time as Wednesday was, which I guess makes sense because it's no longer the first epic return after a couple weeks off. Now we're back in the swing of it. How about that? And I'm so happy to be back with you. Speaking of that, let's roll over to Tales of Grace's F. Just my little corner of the world here for a minute. Is that better? Yeah. Yeah, okay. I think that's better. All right. So you might recall the key things that we went through last time were pretty much Sophie coming to terms with the fact that Asbel is using Lambda's power and freaking out about that, but also platforming off of that to utter something that, as we were discussing, Grail, she'd probably been thinking and trying to figure out how to name and talk about for a long time, namely this desire to actually be human and this recognition that even though she's human in many senses, at the end of the day, she's not human. So she hopes to see if there's a way to make that possible, although she doubts that there is. We also had a long-awaited reunion with Pascal and with the Amarcians more broadly in the Enclave, which led to two main things. First, we have kind of a secondary marriage plot now to Asbel's, where just as Asbel is thinking about whom he wants to marry and what kind of family he wants to have when he grows up, so too is Hubert wrestling with his feelings for Pascal, which he can't quite talk about because I think it seems so absurd to him that he is in love with Pascal, and yet he is, so much so that he's willing to refuse the president's daughter from Strata in pursuit of his true love. And then also, of course, we learned that the monsters in the world, which presumably spawned from Lambda, at least some of them, also seem to be evolving very quickly in response to the various interactions they've had with humans in the very volatile proceedings of the world from the main game. And so Pascal has a sense that this might have to do with something going on in the core of Fodra, from which, as we were discussing last time, it seems to be the case that all life is derived. And so there might or might not be some machinations going on up on Fodra. We don't know yet. And then we made our way to Strata because they too were having problems with these newfangled and evolved monsters around their Valkanus. And so we were going to help them deal with that. And I think that brings us up to date, more or less. Also, yes, Grail, you mentioned this last time, and I totally missed your meaning, but I was thinking about different ways in which monsters do or don't evolve. And you mentioned Dawn of the New World. Yeah, I don't think there's much meaning made of it narratively that I recall, but it is like a full and proper mechanic in that game in the spirit of Pokemon that monsters literally evolve. So I guess it's all the more fitting that since Tales of Graces came out right after Dawn of the New World. I mean, granted, there's a little more time before the F arc was released, but it makes sense for that same contemplation of what it is for monsters to evolve and adapt with the world to be in the ether for the creators of this. So that's at least one other model to look to as we continue on in our adventures here. I have a feeling we won't see the purple-haired woman again until it's too late to stop her, Grail, and then we'll have to deal with all of the aftermath of whatever she's been scheming for, I was going to say for the whole arc, but probably for thousands of years if I know my Tales storytelling. All right, so let's dive back in. Welcome back to Tales of Graces and to Tales of Praxis, my friends. So I think, and Grail, you can let me know, of course, I'm pretty sure we were done with the side questing content for now. So I think we're good to go to the Valkanus and deal with the next onslaught of monsters. Yeah, and it was interesting too with that, Grail. Shoot, what's her name? I have Naomi in my head, but that's not right. Is it Victoria? Or am I thinking of a different spear lady? Got it. Good to know. I'll keep that in mind. Victoria, yeah. I was all the more interested because you might remember she came back for the Excalibur side quest with Asbel learning about the history of the Sword of the Empire that was entrusted to his father, which made me think, oh, maybe we'll get more insight into her relationship with Malik or why she did what she did with betraying Richard and siding with his uncle as part of this subversive plot to take over Windor. But none of that seems to have been elaborated on at all. Yeah, I'm kind of struck and puzzled by that too. Because we talked about last stream how there are many cases in these games, especially with party members, where the absence of a party member or them changing their allegiance can be a really key and rewarding part of the story. One example that came to mind after last time, Grail, which I won't elaborate on, but you know because you've played Eternia, is the very important party member who only shows up in the party for a very short amount of time, and yet who is one of the most memorable characters in the game. But Victoria doesn't strike me like that. Victoria strikes me as someone who, like you say, it feels as if she ought to be more fleshed out in the game than she is. So I almost wonder, did they have more content planned for her and it got left on the cutting room floor or something? I don't know. It's an interesting puzzle. He does have a cool theme. So much of the music in that game is just fantastic. We're going to need to start a clock on how long it takes before Aaron gushes about Tales of Eternia if we keep things up at this pace. And I would be fine with that. Oh, I have to go outside the city to go into shuttle mode. I always forget this. Is it just outside the... oh, yeah, actually I just have to get outside of the building. Ever the more confusing. Alright, away we go. Hey, Chrissy, of course it is. Welcome back. Happy New Year. We missed you last time. Such a pleasure to have you back.
Damn! They just keep coming!
I would say there are a few reasons for that, Grail. Knowing you and knowing the mid-boss that you're talking about. Yeah, I'm excited to publish on it, and then I might just force like an extended schedule to play through Tales of Eternia on the stream, so then everyone who wants to be caught up to it can be, because there's so much in that game I want to talk about, and it feels so unfair when it's so old and so few people have played it, but we have the power to fix that with Tales of Praxis, so maybe I'll just prioritize that. We'll never forgive you. No, I'm kidding, obviously. But yeah, how was your new year? How are your holidays? What have you been playing? You missed the catch up last time, so you're going to have to catch us up after the fact. I'm interested to see how that settles, Grail, because you all know I have a lot of love for Tales of the Abyss, and a lot of love for all of these games. You know I've also been gushing quite a bit about Tales of Vesperia since I did my very in-depth study on that, but yeah, the more I'm sitting with Tales of Eternia, and especially seeing it in the constellation of other games and what it takes from and gives to them, it seems like they hit on something really special with that one.
Come on, let's lend a hand.
But I'm also falling in love with Tales of Hearts right now, as I've talked about, so that's my secret. Every Tales game is my favorite Tales game. Except Tales of Legendia, but I'm sure that'll change once I replay it with more charity in my heart. Oh, that's exciting though, Chrissy. How are you feeling about it? Are you excited? Are you nervous? I hope it goes well for you. We'll be thinking of you. I accidentally switched characters. Now I have to figure out how to switch back. How did I even do that? There we go. Right. Yeah, thank you, Grail.
There, you see, Hubert? He's talking to you.
That was directed at the both of you.
I imagine you can guess why this happened, Grail, but it's because you need to use the D-pad for so much navigation in Tales of Hearts. So it's like I have to jump back and forth between very different input settings between the two games. Well, keep us posted on how it develops, Chrissy. I'll be sending you good vibes.
Thank you, Lieutenant.
I'm sure it must be a really exciting and momentous thing, nerve-wracking though it is to move on to the next stage of things. You know, I'm in a similar set of feelings about a different stage in my own development, with waiting for judgments to be rendered on all of my PhD apps now that they're in. So I feel you spiritually.
Assemble the remaining soldiers and hold this point at all costs.
Yeah, maybe I should just do that too, Grail. Of course, now it's the funny thing where I've played the game for, like I said, probably 10 hours, and so then I'd have to relearn everything according to a different input setting.
Yes, sir.
Oh, so exciting. Well, certainly don't let the work for us take over your holiday, and enjoy the sunny holiday, because I know that you have earned it, and you have earned a relaxing break, but you know that With the Terrible Fate is so excited to see what you put together for us. And I'm excited just to have an excuse to talk games with you more. So yes, that's news that makes me smile ear to ear for every reason. That's not the right button. There we go. Favorite skit. All right, let's listen in.
These ruins as expediently as possible.
Doing so will earn you further accolades and raise your stock. Soon the president will beg to have you as his son-in-law.
Please, that's enough. It is not the sort of decision one should be coerced into making. He's right.
But it's a truth of marriage. The higher you rise, the less your own opinions matter.
You too, Richard?
Oh yes. An endless stream of Windor nobility keeps pestering me about their eligible daughter.
Richard was the bachelor all along.
I envy your array of options, Your Majesty.
Do you now? I've heard talk that you have a beautiful girl waiting at every port in the land.
Yeah, it's rough. Girls keep telling themselves and everyone else that they're...
Interesting. Might you have done something to give them that impression?
Not that I can remember.
Come on, guys. This is crazy. I don't want to select a wife like I'm shopping from a catalog.
Oh, I don't remember, but then again, my memory is pretty selective. Malik, my man, you ignominious stud. And yes, Chrissy, thank you. I will definitely keep you informed. That's Grail. I gotta say, I mean, you know, I love all of these skits, but I'm surprised that that one rates as your favorite of the entire game. I mean, there are some pretty strong contenders for that role, even in the other ones we've seen in this fourth act. Those new monsters wrecked all the supply crates, and now the main path is blocked. How am I supposed to clean with monsters trying to eat me for lunch? Look out, we got troubles. Huge monsters everywhere, yeah? Prepare yourselves. Bye, bye, bye. That's fair. So maybe that's the question answered right there, because you love Richard so much, but you're usually so critical of his voice actor, and so maybe it's that one sweet spot where your favorite character has a line that you think is voiced extremely well. I would buy that. Okay, I think we just did dualizing at the end of last time, if memory serves. Yeah, looks like we're good. Fabulous. All right, onward. Come agains. Oh, you wouldn't say that's your favorite skit overall? Man, you buzzkill, you got me all excited to see Grail's favorite skit at last. So does that mean we've already seen the one that's actually your favorite, or is it still coming up?
Stand strong.
Oh, we never got back to that one, did we? Or am I just forgetting it? Because I remember you talking about it really early on, and I feel like we tried to see it, but we weren't able to yet. Well, I forked our save for exactly that reason, so we can definitely go back to the third act for stuff that rates as worthwhile, such as that. Boy, these guys are pretty strong. Almost like they've evolved. Yes. Chrissy, to make a long story short, Japan was amazing. Yes, I did buy lots of amazing rare merch. Watch the VODs for this stream and the last one, because what I decided to do is basically for the next few streams, I'm starting them with a little bit of show and tell of things that I collected over my adventure there. So already the stream has seen a few very special pieces of Tales memorabilia, including the first ever collector's edition that was released for the series, as well as some great Xenoblade stuff and other stuff besides. I'm wearing a Bloodborne shirt right now, if you can't tell, which I also got over there. But yes, every aspect of the trip was amazing and I'll remember for a long time. And a lot of it, I think, will cascade down to the way in which I think about and want to publish on video games. There was a lot of the culture that that seeped into even how I'm thinking about the Tales games as I'm playing through them. But yeah, we saw so many great shrines, so many great temples. We took a hot spring with snow monkeys in Nagano, which was truly a once-in-a-lifetime experience. We saw the bowing deer in Nara. Lots of great pop culture adventures through many Pokemon centers and other great attractions in Tokyo and Kyoto. Lots of great hikes. We went over to Kamakura, saw the amazing giant outdoor Buddha that's there. Saw the amazing giant indoor Buddha in Nara. All kinds of great adventures. I think I said this last time. My guess is that a lot of them will come out in context that presents itself on the stream through the various adventures we have in the Tales games. So my guess is that'll be a more efficient way to catch everyone up than just doing an information dump on them. But yeah, it was great. Ah, yes. The skit's real-life utility. I had undervalued that. That's a great point, Grail. Nothing like video game jokes that you can steal shamelessly in your real life. Brave Vesperia. Ah, maybe my favorite of the cameo swords to date. A dual blade named for the brightest star in the sky. Your courage will shine just as bright. Amazing. Now, the real question, if you have a spare 3 hours and want to have a colloquium on it, is does the Brave Vesperia sword in Tales of Grace's F qualify according to Aaron's analysis as an instance of Dane Nomos. So I'll leave that as an open question for now. And maybe once we get to the expert mode of the stream, we can have an extra inning some night just talking about that. It's for Hubert. Excellent. Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. I wish you had asked. As you might imagine, Japan is lousy with Persona stuff, which Dan was delighted about, so he picked up more than a few Persona things, if I remember correctly. Yeah, I'm trying to think. What were some of the other highlights I shared yesterday? I told the stream one of my favorite things is finding pieces of merchandise for series that I love that I didn't know existed. So one thing that was so special was a 20th anniversary boxed set of all 3 of the soundtracks for all of the versions of the first ever Tales game, Tales of Fantasia, that had been released throughout the years. And it was just the most beautiful box itself, like really thoughtfully put together with illustrations of the characters and screenshots from the games and meaningful quotations. And I'm just so happy to have all of those soundtracks. Like, truly this very afternoon, as I was doing my research for my article on Tales of Fantasia, I was bopping to the soundtrack in the background, which I had downloaded onto my laptop. So that was a great find. And I stumbled upon and had to immediately get, because it felt as if it had just been placed there waiting for me on a shelf in a secondhand store, a copy of the collector's edition of Xenoblade Chronicles 2, which to my knowledge, I don't think we ever got in the States, but is just absolutely beautiful. Great art, a great steel case, and a nice feather in the cap of my Xenoblade Chronicles collection, which expanded tonight with a couple of really cool like metal renderings of the swords from those games. I guess you could call them keychains, but that's not really doing them justice. See, that's interesting, Grail, because I would actually be inclined, at least at first blush, to compare Sophie more directly with the Swordians. You know, the way they have a mission that they've been instilled with, that they're required to carry out to the exclusion of all else. Whereas De Nomos, right, like that's something that allows its user to express the user's will as something like a universal law. But she definitely seems like some kind of magic sword, which all the more reason that she wants to be a human, right? Oh, which part surprises you, Chrissy? I missed the context for that message. I'm sorry. There were many surprising things in Japan, so you'll have to be more specific. Yeah, it was great. I'll show you some pics, Chrissy, because it really is just like, I'm such a sucker for really thoughtfully curated pieces of meaningful fan service, and especially with soundtracks for Japanese games. The market just seems to be leaning in that direction, where I picked up so many soundtracks because they all looked so beautiful with great track selections, but also just the physical boxes being just so tastefully designed. And so, yeah, I'll have to show you. I was joking with Dan, but being quite serious about the joke. I think I'm going to have to get a whole new bookcase just to display all the things that I got on this trip, because every one of them, I mean, Japan is lousy with all these pieces of memorabilia for the various series that have originated over there, but every one of those pieces of memorabilia is like an artwork unto itself that I really want to be able to display with pride. Dan already has put all of his stuff on display in his like gaming and collectibilia room, and oh my goodness, he has an eye for curation, let me tell you. Every one of his shelves is just like a little museum display. That is a great point, Grail. Yes, Critical Blade, I had forgotten that. Oh man, that's one of those things where you say it, and now I almost want to half write an article or an addendum to my Sword article just about that. The idea of like when does Sophie like stop being a character and start being a sword? Because there's precedent for that in the series too, right? Part of what's so interesting about the Swordians is that they're pieces of equipment and swords that actually are like proper characters in the game that contribute to conversations and gain experience and learn moves and many of the things you would expect a character to do. So there might be an interesting sense in which Sophie is kind of the reverse of that, where she seems like more of a character than a sword, but has many sword-like attributes to her. Ooh, I might have to add that to my list of article ideas. Oh, I think that surprises you because you misheard me, Chrissy. I said that there's like way too much Persona merch in Japan. Like you can't walk into a store without seeing a bunch of Persona stuff. Ruka's Karta. It was probably just luck. Another character with whom I'm not familiar, but I'm sure that'll change at some point. Oh, awesome. Yeah, thank you for keeping track of that for me, Grail. Yeah, I don't think I've really been taking account of any of the Excel modes besides Asbel's. Well, it's funny you mentioned that about the suitcase, Chrissy, because I kind of turned into a meme very quickly in Japan because I brought, like, what I would call a normal checked bag. Like, it wasn't an absurdly oversized bag, but then once I filled it with all the things that I bought over there, it became by like a laughable margin the biggest bag anyone had in Japan. Like anytime I saw someone with a suitcase, it was smaller than mine. And I do feel as if I got a workout lugging it the many miles that we walked over there, even just traveling from one hotel to the other. And I always felt very guilty about taking it on public transportation and crowding people out with it. So, I mean, I was able to fit it all into a suitcase, but it was a sight to behold, that suitcase. A heavy sight to behold. And I always felt bad whenever the hotel personnel tried to be good hosts by picking it up on my behalf and carrying it to my room. But they pretty quickly gave up on that and gave in to my insistence that they let me carry it. But yeah, it's you have to display and honor those things in your collection. As a collector, that's something I feel really strongly about. You can't just own them and tuck them away. Because for me, part of the magic of a collection is being able to introduce other people to it and use it as a conversation piece to talk about the game or the piece of art and why it is that you value it, and maybe even encourage them to play it, or maybe even find out that they already play it and it's something that's really special to them too. I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with people that have helped me really get to know them better based on either my collection or theirs. Okay, so Richard's Accel mode decreases his casting time by half, which is awesome. Hubert's is arrow rain and spawns a bunch of arrows around an enemy. Very cool. Oh, got it. That was the main character of Innocence we saw.
That wasn't it, was it?
Man, so all of these are from Innocence. Just making me want to play Innocence more. Yeah, that's true, Chrissy. I mean, there are so many different places and subcultures in Japan. That's something that Dan was telling me, actually. Like, Tokyo itself is so big that there's like an area and a region for every possible like Japanese subculture that you could be interested in, from fashion to food to gaming and anime. So one does have to kind of know where to go to seek out the stuff that one wants. But as long as you're able to make it Takihabara, I think you're pretty well set for anything to do with gaming and anime, especially Persona. Malik's Accel is awful. Oh no! Oh, was it a new victory quote, Grail? I might have missed it because I was talking. Darn. Well, hopefully it'll come up again since we're keeping this party for a minute. Oh man, that was really cool.
I'll keep on getting stronger.
When Malik enters Accel mode, he's trash according to Grail, he unleashes a flurry of kicks followed by a punch, the power of which depends on how full the gauge is at the time of deployment. It's useful to use if an enemy approaches while you're in the middle of casting, as entering Excel mode while casting causes arts to launch immediately. That does sound very contextual in comparison with some of the others. And, by the way, look at that Brave Vesperia weapon of Hubert's. Talk about a beautiful weapon that does justice to the game it's sourced from. You can feel not only the unity of the guild, but also the strength of Yuri's final mystic art with which he ends the game in that weapon. Man, storytelling through weapons. One of the many things that the Tale series is just fantastic for.
I can't lose. Go, go, go.
Yeah, as if he's directly calling out to and invoking Lambda, right, Grail? It's a really interesting observation. The way, say, Sheena would invoke the summon spirits when summoning them, or indeed the way in which Duke evokes a Lucifer during his final confrontation with the party. I think that's verbatim the line. Actually, I know it's verbatim the line from Duke after the first battle with him. He says, "My friend, lend me your strength." When Hubert enters Excel mode, he unleashes a rain of arrows, the duration of which depends on how full the gauge is at the time. You can still move while the arrows fall, allowing you to build combos, even while moving to attack distant enemies. That is very cool. Nothing like a good arrow rain. Puts me in mind of another archer whom I'm thinking about right now. And that's the last hint you're going to get. Oh, gross. See, now my mind is just in the headspace of the puzzles and Tales of Hearts, which are just slightly different enough to confuse me. What am I doing wrong? Yeah, you got it in one, buddy. We're talking about Hisui. Oh my god, I feel like I'm having a stroke. There we go. Alright. I'm not entirely sure what it is that I did differently, but I'll take the W. Yeah, this is something else I'll say about Japan just because you're asking, Chrissy, and it might sound like an obvious thing when I say it, but it's something that I didn't really feel until my second time there. I would say it's one of those places where it really rewards doing like a lot of different things and experiencing a bunch of different aspects of the culture, because like seeing the nation through its pop culture is so different from seeing it through its history in, like, you know, monuments like the ruins of Edo Castle or some of these historic shrines and temples. And that's so different than exploring its natural wonders like the mountain ranges or the hot springs or the flora and fauna, right? And I think I was quite narrow in my interests and the things that I explored the first and only other time that I went there to visit Dan, because, you know, it's kind of just how it goes. Your first time in a place, you have the one or two things you're most excited about, and you're seeing your friend over there, and so, you know, there's not a lot of space to explore the full range of things that are possible. But when you do get a diversity of experiences and aspects of the culture in, you can start to kind of get at least an intuitive sense of how they're all enmeshed with each other and interlinked in these cool relational networks, where even seeing something like, well, especially seeing something like the religious heritage of the country and the way in which its political dynasties have evolved over time can make you think about a lot of the stories that are told in your favorite works of anime and video games quite differently. And little things, like I think I mentioned this last time, but one of my favorite things was sitting down with a practitioner of the traditional Japanese tea ceremony and learning all about the history and the method of that, and how to do something as seemingly simple as drinking tea with honor and reverence and respect for the host and the guest and the tea and even the implements. Like, my goodness, the reverence with which this host treated, like, the scoop for the matcha, and the bowl, and the cloth for cleaning and purifying the implements. It really shows just respect for the objects and tools that you use in your life, which is something that I think we could all take lessons from in terms of the intentionality that we bring to everyday practices, right? And to me, I think, you know, my visit to Japan was a million little lessons like that, as much as anything else. So I try to bring that sense of ritual to things like drinking coffee and drinking tea, but also, you know, honoring your implements for playing games, right? Like something as seemingly simple as taking care of your controllers and your systems and the packaging, right? One of the things that Dan was commenting on, which was remarkable to him and remarkable to me as well, was that if you think about Game Boy Advance games, right? You might recall, if you're old enough, I guess, they came in these relatively flimsy cardboard boxes for packaging. And so in the States, the MO of a lot of people was just to save the cartridge and maybe the instruction manual, but throw out the cardboard box because it was pretty hard to store and it didn't have the firmness to it as something like a plastic case, right? But in Japan, people saved those boxes in pretty great condition. And so now if you're going around a lot of these secondhand stores, you can find things like the original Pokemon games in their original packaging for pretty affordable prices because they're pretty common over there. Whereas people here, you know, they don't treat those objects always with the same kind of reverence. For the record, I do. I can show you exactly where all of my cardboard Game Boy Advance cases are, and I've done my best to take care of them over the years. But yeah, given just the type of material they're made from, it's hard, and it does require a kind of intentionality to it. So yeah, just being mindful of how you use and treat your objects, I think, is a powerful lesson. Seraphic Arts, a shimmering gauntlet that responds to those whose hearts are as pure as angels. Oh, but Sophie's not with us right now. I love that. But wait, Seraphic Arts, I mean, that... My guess is that would be from Zisteria, right? I mean, that was where we had Seraphim coming from, but I thought that Zisteria came after the F Arc of Graces. Can you help me out, Grail? Am I losing my mind? Oh, there were definitely a lot of salarymen, Grail. I'm just catching up on messages. Oh, it's for Hearts? Okay, that would have been my second guess. I don't remember Seraphic Arts coming up in that. Although maybe I just haven't gotten that far in the story yet. Ah, other Tales game I'm playing. Are you spoiling me for other Tales game I'm playing? Why? The things I do to myself. But yeah, lots of school children, lots of salarymen. I think those were probably the two most easily discernible and populous groups of people that we saw. And oftentimes in the same places. Like there were a few breakfasts that we took in diners, especially in places in downtown Tokyo like Shibuya, where basically everyone we saw at a booth was either a student or a, as you say, depressed office worker. Oh, that's awesome, Chrissy. Well, definitely let me know as you put your trip over there together. I'd love to know what you're planning to do, what you're excited about. Happy to give you advice or thoughts to the extent that it's useful.
What was that?
Yeah, I hear you, Chrissy. Malik is super dead. That's the interesting thing about collections, right? And I think part of why it's important to display them with some honor too, because what might look like, oh, Seraphic Hearts. You're right. I just can't read Grail. Thank you. Between the two of us, we can form one competent player. Yeah, that's the kind of weird magic about collections, right? Something can seem like an ordinary and valueless object to one person and can be deeply meaningful to someone else. And so when you display it and frame it in a way that draws someone's attention to why it might be special, then suddenly things that, as you say, your parents might just be inclined to throw away, have a certain sense of reverence and value attached to them. But you're right, oftentimes we, at least if you're me, you really don't learn those lessons until you lose over the years aspects of what would have been a collection, or things that you realize you actually valued and learned a lot from as a kid, right? And so then you have to start those practices from that point onward.
I can't lose.
It will take more than that to stand in our way.
Boy, Richard is really being conservative with using that Excel mode. Waiting for just the right moment, I guess.
Enemies? Very well.
That weapon of yours is quite distinctive.
It's a Strahd military secret. I can't speak of it.
Oh, I've got it mostly figured out.
I'm starting to think you might have a thing for this Richard guy,
You
Grail.
sure love getting flustered.
But yes, he is very cool. And it's neat too, and something that feels very Tales to me, that, you know, there's nothing inherently evil about any elemental alignment, including darkness. Like, think about someone like Shadow from Tales of Symphonia and that whole line of games. There's nothing intrinsically evil about Shadow. And so it's cool to see Richard out the other side of that malice that Lambda cultivated in him, being able to use darkness in a way that's just kind of cool and just edgelordy enough, maybe you might say, without thereby being evil or anything like that. When Richard enters Excel mode, the casting time for all of his burst darts will be cut in half. Furthermore, he will recover CC each time he attacks, unleashing a whole new world of combo possibilities. Oh man, well, 1 out of 2 ain't terrible, Chrissy. And at least now I'm sure you're sufficiently outspoken about all of it that everyone understands. So I think it's as much a matter of where you end up as where you start. But yeah, hard to even articulate the meaning of that as a kid, you know? I think that's part of it. Like, you have to learn for yourself the language behind why it matters before you can express that to others. Not unlike what we do on With the Terrible Fate with all our stuff. Ah, see, it was all a plug all along. It's a front just to get you to engage with our content more. We love the monarchy, Grail. Monarchy is our favorite thing. He does seem to be like a decently repentant monarch now that he's gone through all of the chaos and madness he inflicted on the world under the yoke of Lambda. So I guess in the spirit of what we were saying about collections, at least he ended up in a good spot. Fandom's Light, a staff filled with the promise of making dreams into reality and reality into dreams. Well, that's a great one to get in homage to the Tales of Festivals, which we started the stream with Collectabilia from.
We will survive.
No, it's got to be a reference to Tales of Fandom. I don't believe they'd be that meta about it.
Carried away?
Not meta in that sense, at least. I think that's true, Chrissy, unless there are any other secret Brits in the audience or British lurkers. But yeah, so far as I know. And we got another swimsuit back, Sophie's swimsuit. All right. I do kind of like that we're stumbling upon the swimsuits without having made a concerted effort to just knock them all off in one go. Nice quality of life. Damn, you got us there, Grail. I guess that means I live under a monarchy too. Oh man, I'll tell you, I walked into a Target just to do some shopping for toiletries I had to leave behind in Japan, actually, because of the way checked baggage works. So I went into Target to replenish them the other day, and I saw that they had just stocked the 25th anniversary like special packs for Yu-Gi-Oh, which I didn't even know were out in the States yet. And I got so excited, and I bought a bunch, and I felt like a kid again, and it was great. Konami, when it comes to Yu-Gi-Oh, is so good for its fan service, and it's definitely kept fans like me engaged and in love with the series for quite a long time at this point. Yeah, I walked into a Target, and somehow when I left, I didn't have any money. How did that happen? It was one of those cool experiences too, because I don't know if you've ever had an experience with any of your pop culture fandoms like this, but I was wandering around the Target, and without even realizing it, as I often do, I kind of unconsciously gravitated towards the little shelf where they keep all of their trading cards. And usually it's quite empty, but I think they had just restocked it. And so I went over and I was looking at the shelves, and then I spied over the corner of my eye another guy was kind of lurking and looking at the shelves. And so then we just kind of looked at each other and started like talking trading cards for a few minutes. And it's fun and such a magical part of these things we love, I think, that it just instantly clicks as a lingua franca between you and someone whom you've never met and otherwise wouldn't know from Adam. But suddenly you have this whole common wealth of experience and interface through which you can engage with them and talk about things that you really care quite a lot about. Really magical, these pop cultural things we love. I think we want this one next. That might have been wrong, actually. Oh, there we go. Even when I think I'm wrong, I'm right. It's magic, you know. See, and that's a great crystallization of what I've tried to point to about you in the past, Grail, where I say, like, I think of you as kind of gameplay forward, because obviously you think a ton about the story and like every aspect of these games, which is wonderful and part of why it's so much fun to have you in the chat. But I feel like in the sense that you just pointed to with Richard, where you say he's my favorite to play as, and so that's my into him as a character. I feel like the quality and your experience of the gameplay oftentimes like opens the door for the way in which you think about the rest of the game. That's my take on you anyway, for what it's worth. I don't know whether you feel that way. Well, and especially in a game that's so humor forward as this, as we've been talking about, I think it's perfectly appropriate to laugh at those things even when they can also be quite sobering and serious. Like, two things can be true, especially in a Tales game. Oh, the haunted misconnection years later. I've had experiences like that too, Chrissy, so whatever it's worth, I feel you. You are not alone. Many has been the occasion when I've been interacting with someone with like a group of friends in some venue, and then it's only after we leave that my friends are like, you realize she was into you, right? And I was like, no, why didn't you tell me that? That would have been useful information even 5 minutes earlier. Oh, friends are the best. If there's one thing JRPGs teach us, and especially the fourth act of Tales of Graces is teaching us, it's that friends are the best for helping us with our romantic pursuits. I'm telling you, dude, get to Japan. That was the craziest thing to me. I know I keep saying that about every part of Japan, and that's just because it was all memorable and really interesting and fun, but I think I said this on Wednesday too. Just, it so felt like I had found my tribe in the sense that like Tales is so recognized and popular over there. So I didn't feel like a crazy gaslit person trying to tell a bunch of people who had never heard of Tales how special the series is. There's a lesson there. Your community and your fandom exists, and there are people who see the same value as you in the things that you care about. It just may not be co-located with you at this exact moment. Undini cloak. A cloak believed to have been lost by the royal family. It has been blessed with water, Eleth. Should keep track of how many cloaks we have at this point. We must be rounding on the totality of the elements, assuming it's just a normal layout of elements.
I'm sensing something strange. The monsters we seek may be nearby.
And with this, your stock will rise, the president will beg to have you as his son-in-law, and...
Again with this? Your lips are much too loose, Captain. What sort of soldier openly discusses his comrades' personal affairs?
This sort of soldier.
Well, usually my lips are sealed, but when it's information we all share already, that's a different story.
My affairs are not common gossip. Now that you mention it, I'm pretty sure the captain spilled one of my secrets once.
Whatever are we to do with you, Malik? We shall have to find a punishment that fits your crime. Perhaps I should read aloud the contents of a certain love letter you wrote 20 years ago.
I don't know where you got that, but if you read it, I'll be forced to share humiliating stories from His Majesty's...
Mutually assured destruction.
Threaten your king?
There's little difference between king and subject in a place like this.
We're the same, you and I.
Hey, stop! Listen to me.
He does have quite a defined jawline, doesn't he? If Pottery were here, I would make an I think you should leave reference. I'll still make it because I'm sure it'll land when Pottery is watching the VOD later on. The chin kills! I know. I still haven't gotten over that either, Grail, that he knew about Keel and recognized him more immediately than Reed. Or even Farah. I would have taken Farah over Keel. But, you know, I've got to stop because I'll start gushing about Tales of Eternia again. But Keel, as with all of those characters, hits differently for me. I think his arc is a really powerful one, especially for a supporting character, from where they start him versus where they end him, and the impact that they employ him for to change Reed's perspective of the world. Listen, ask and you shall receive, Grail. I'll pop him into the first slot and see if I can do it. You're gonna have to remind me how, though. I do Sonic Mount during the Eleth break, and then do I hit the Mystic Art button, or is it just triggered by doing Sonic Mount? Oh, you're showing my lack of Studio Ghibli knowledge, Chrissy. Because I think Howl's Moving Castle is one that I watched, but it would be at least like 10, 15 years ago at this point. I really got a bone up. That was one that I felt like I was missing out on being in Japan, because as you might imagine, there's a ton of fandom stuff for that over there too.
It appears Fourier was correct after all.
Let's do this.
No, I'm not kidding. Do it after Sonic Mount, but before anything else so it doesn't proc his defaults. Okay.
Stand strong. Stand in throne.
Okay. Okay, I might have to do it in a battle different than this one though, because I feel like quasi boss fight in the 4th act is going to require me to actually know what I'm doing. Oh yeah, that's true. We probably put him on a different title to get his Excel ability. I know, the homework never ends. Well, I'll tell you this, though. I'm actually in better standing for that than I was before Japan, because Dan got me while we were over there to finally watch Paprika, which I loved, by the way. So that's not Studio Ghibli, but it was one that I felt equally guilty about not having ever seen. So I do my homework. There's just way too much homework to get done at any given time. Oh my god, this is awful. I might just have to restart. Trying to start as Malik really confused me. This is just the worst. I think it's probably the most famous movie by Satoshi Kon, this famous Japanese filmmaker, also widely recognized as the inspiration for, and many would say better version of, Inception. Yeah, I think I might have to... Oh, there you go. I was going to say, I think I'm going to have to retry this, but it made that decision for me. Alright. Well, here we go. I'll get dialed in and try it for real this time. That's right, Chrissy. Exactly. Same guy. Yeah, that's what I'm feeling. The lack of competent healing. That definitely makes it tougher. Alright, well, let's try it as is, and then if we need to tweak their loadouts and stuff, we can do that. Oh, but you know what might be helpful? What do we have in the mixer? We have a couple of revival things, right? So if I reload the mixer, that might be helpful. Cool. Alright. And rely on Excel. Yeah, that's a good idea. I have a feeling you would really enjoy it, Chrissy. Yes, so definitely do that, and then let me know what you think. Dan and I had a very fun, classic us, like 30 to 45 minute conversation after it, talking about philosophy of storytelling and filmmaking and Chris Nolan versus Satoshi Kon and their different approaches to storytelling and a million other fun things. It will be tight, Malik. I'm going to try to focus for you. Just need to try to eliminate some of them right off the bat, I think. Alright, there we go. Yeah, I think it really was just starting out with Malik that turned me on the battle. That was so much better. I was worried for a moment that we'd be stuck here for the rest of the stream. No, I just wasn't mentally prepared. Yeah, you can use it to break through anything, right, Grail? I like that. It's like a an overlimit plus, which, if I remember correctly, is how you described it when we first got it. Something that forces a clean break like that and resets enemies is a really nice way of feeling powerful as a JRPG party. And as the player, for that matter. You're putting a lot of trust in Lambda, Asbel. Ooh.
That's the last of them.
It looks like that power is coming at a price.
We need to find the source of these monsters before things get worse.
Agreed. They're almost unmanageable as it is. Let's return to the Amarcian Enclave and meet up with the girls.
Yeah, that's a good point, Grail. And a nice way of keeping it balanced, because the other combat abilities it gives you are so ridiculous, but you still have to be tactical and protective of the character while you're using it. Oh, that's awesome. I had missed that Richard's Symphonia sword has the whole representation of the twin worlds on it.
You look exhausted.
And you're only looking through one eye, the Lambda eye, which is really worrying me.
Sure it's safe to keep wielding Lambda's power like this?
Stealing my lines, Richard.
I'm fine. I'm just not used to it. Besides, I know he's not trying to control me.
Did he say that?
No. I just trust that it's true.
I don't understand, Asbel. I would never have the strength to trust him after what he did.
It's not about strength, Richard. If anything, I have to believe in him because I'm weak.
This sequence of lines I'm going to call out as another one of my favorite of Asbel's voice actors' performances in this whole game, Tales of Graces, because he's hitting that same intonation that came about at the end of Act 3, where he feels just really like quietly determined and enlightened, just like, no, I know this is a good guy and I'm okay with that, and you don't have to understand because I understand how I have to treat him and what it takes to forge mutual respect with him. There's a nice way he just kind of throws away those lines that gives them a lot of power.
But I suppose some things can't be helped no matter how hard you believe. When we were kids, I believed we'd be together forever. And so did Sophie.
Cool, thank you, Grail.
That's not gonna happen. Not as long as we're all human.
Asbel.
We can hope and pray and believe all we want, but it doesn't change a damn thing. That's why I don't know what to say to her.
Spada's Carta. What's up with you? This is a really interesting addition, the fourth act, also, because I've called out before many times during our Tales of Graces playthrough that Asbel's journey, it feels to me like a journey of enlightenment in the sense of like the sort of spiritual and like Buddhist transcendence that leads you to kind of look beyond the essence of self to think about the universe more holistically, and allows him to embrace Lambda in that kind of meditative conversation at the end of the game. But a big part of what it was that catalyzed Buddhism in the traditional understanding was Siddhartha's confrontation with death and the inevitability of age and decay, and the cessation of experience, which isn't really something that is as vividly foregrounded in the first three acts of Tales of Graces, but now is basically the central concern of this fourth act. So I wonder how that's going to change and supplement Asbel's journey and path to enlightenment. Your favorite character from Innocence. All right, Grail. Stacking on. Things for me to be excited about once I get to that. Yeah, and I would say, just to add to that, Grail, because I completely agree, I think it's also a logical progression in the cool way of making a story out of something that people who love stories often talk about, which is the fact that, yeah, you know, there are stories about characters and particular adventures they go through, but then the characters presumably live on after the story's over, and so we can have all of this fun and speculating, well, what happens to them after the story? And there's all this space for things like sequels and things like that. But that idea of a character basically being tailor-made to fulfill some certain kind of narrative arc and then to be left to his own devices after that narrative arc has been completed, like, who is Asbel if he's not going through that story, right? And so to me, part of what's interesting and a logical progression in this Act 4 is we're kind of seeing a story about characters who are living on beyond the limits of their own story, which is a really natural context in which for them to be asking, well, what is it that we do now?
I need to relay our report for the
We have to
president.
figure out some other meaning to have in our lives. We have to think about what happens when we get old and when we outlive all our stories and when we die, when life has a conclusion, right? So really sobering and really interesting, and a very, to me, natural narrative context in which to elicit those sorts of really hard and human contemplations. wanted to mention something about Asbel's discussion of Lambda too, so put a pin in that. We'll talk about it after this scene.
So what's Fodra like?
That's right. You haven't been there before.
Nah, I was busy like sucking up all the energy from the world and making a big cocoon. You know, normal king things.
It's sad, actually. It's withered and desolate, and everything's dead.
And that's where Lambda came from.
Yeah.
Oh, that's true. We'd be taking Lambda back there for the first time since he was tortured by Emerald. Wow, I can't believe I only just put that together. Whew.
You are conflicted.
Can't hide anything from you, huh? You heard what Sophie said.
Proto's haste was designed to destroy me. That was the entire purpose for her existence. And now that purpose is gone, it's no wonder she's malfunctioning.
Yeah, notice this too as a parallel to what I was saying about characters outliving their story. Now their purpose is gone. No wonder they're malfunctioning. Thinking about these existential questions that characters often don't. Yeah, the PS3 story. A desolate wasteland. A sad place where things go to die. Yeah, I think this would be one worth catching up on, Chrissy. Especially given your first experience with Graces, and given your reactions to it now, I think your working through the rest of it would be really rewarding for you. I think you'd come to love quite a lot of it.
Without purpose, she's little more than an empty, soulless doll, doomed to be alone for all eternity.
Colette and Kohaku want to know your location.
Quite tragic, really. Your human life is limited. How can you hope to save Proto's haste from her solitude?
Well,
Your worries grow with each passing moment. Can you find an answer in the midst of such despair?
This is interesting too, because like it's a subtle difference, and I think it's important, so we can dwell on it for a second. You can read this and you can read the voice acting of Lambda as something sinister, like, oh yeah, Lambda really is trying to control Asbel after all, and we should be worried about him. I don't think that's what's happening though, because remember, the whole conceit of what's happening in Act 4 and the way in which Act 3 was resolved was Lambda had walled himself off from everyone because he didn't have faith in anything, because he'd basically just been tortured and mistreated his whole life from the moment he was sculpted into something human. And so Asbel said, look, I get that you don't trust anything. I want to show you the world, and I want to give you a different perspective on it so that you can have faith in people and see the beauty that you've closed yourself off from. And so Lambda kind of like with some resistance accepted that and let himself be taken into Asbel. But we have every reason to believe that Lambda is still quite cynical of the world. Like, he's given Asbel the chance to show him something different, but I think it's fair to believe that Lambda still has plenty of doubt that there really is beauty or trustworthiness or value in relationships out there. And so I feel like it's not as if he's trying to corrupt Asbel. I think it's almost like he's challenging Asbel, saying, okay, you had all these convictions. Look at everything in the world that pushed me to turn into the kind of monster I became. Are you really going to be able to hold to your convictions in the face of that? Because if you're not, you're proving that you're just the same as I am. But if you are, then you're going to be able to show me that there's something different in the world. So I think like this way in which he's pressing Asbel is part of what it is for Asbel to be taking him on this journey and to be showing him that the world can be otherwise. Like, it has to be this kind of struggle and clarification of Asbel's resolve. Otherwise, there would be no impetus for Lambda to change and get a different perspective. Oh, that's a good question, Grail, while we're stopped and dwelling on this scene. I kind of felt like, without examining it too much, I felt like the world turning to grayscale was just sort of a like a time cutaway. you know, the way in which different works of storytelling will show how like time isn't really passing because this character is just thinking something through or working something through in his own head in a way that takes no narrative time. So I've been thinking of it as a way of showing like, you know, nothing else is happening in the world. Like Malik and Richard and everyone, they're not off having other conversations while Asbel is having this. This is all happening like in his mind in that kind of meditative realm where he's spoken to Lambda before in a kind of split moment. Is that how you read it, or do you read it differently? That's true. There was a lot of death in this stream, but I would say it was worth it. And it's kind of a death-themed stream, as we're seeing now, so it's all connected. I only died in order to reinforce the themes of the game. Otherwise, I obviously wouldn't have died a single time. He said, with not a hint of sarcasm in his voice.
I look forward to watching your fragile little mind scramble for an answer.
Lambda reinforcing the interpretation I just made of him. Thank you, Lambda.
Alone for all eternity.
Oh, I mean, I feel like it would be a big piece of new information we don't get elsewhere if Lambda's able to like literally freeze time in order to talk with Asbel. I feel like it's more of, I think at least like a less revisionary explanation of it would be that it's more of the kind of like representational device you get in like the medium of soliloquy in a theatrical production, right? Where like one character steps away from the action to talk to the audience and have like an inner monologue. And so it's not as if the character is literally freezing time, but they're working through something in a way that does not advance time for the rest of the people in the production, if that makes sense. I think we have that explanation available to us in terms of what's being represented if we don't want to stipulate that Lambda's actually able to manipulate time. Because then I feel like that would raise a lot of other questions about like, well, if he can manipulate time that way, is he using time travel in some sense? Is this a time travel story? And that feels like a leap to a conclusion at odds with a lot of the rest of the game.
When Dad died, if I hadn't recovered from that.
Because we also, I think it's the first time that happens also when the world goes gray that we actually see like Asbel and Lambda in that like meditation realm outside of time talking. So that to me like reads as though we ought to infer something like that is happening every time.
Everything. But then Sophie was there for me. It made me happy. It was like being part of a new family. A family.
Thanks for waiting. Let's be on our way.
This is a cool fourth act too, because if you think about the way Asbel was just reflecting about the death of his dad, remember, that happens quite early in Tales of Graces. It's one of the very first things that happens after the time skip from childhood to adulthood in the first act. And while Asbel is clearly blown away by that and tries to flail around and figure out how to cope with it by, you know, giving up the knighthood and trying to become the interim Lord of Lhant and everything else that he works through, I think there's a sense in which something as significant as any death, but especially the death of a parent or a family member, just requires more time and perspective to work through than is possible in a single moment. And so for us to have this kind of epilogue aftermath of the main story and see Asbel still working through and processing that in new and different ways that are more informed than what was possible in the moment of that death for him, I think lends a lot more dimensionality and verisimilitude to the process of grief that Asbel is experiencing. And it's part of that longitudinal experience of the whole story too, that then makes this fourth act's meditations on death and the hereafter that much more credible and interesting. It's so hot, my shell's sweating. What I wouldn't do for a big lake to jump in right about now. Let's get near the entrance and restock. A good plan. Alright, perfect. So you're saying there's side quest stuff that we should do before we go back to the girls? I'm game. Just point me in the right direction. Let's do it. Oh, okay, cool. So we don't have to go on a bunch of side quests right this minute. I misunderstood you. Alright, onward in the story then. Perfect. I mean, I think the first Crusader has to be Cress, right? Between being the first of our heroes and also the time traveler who went back to the beginning. Although, I don't know, maybe that's debatable, because, like, oh, this is one of those holes that I'm going to regret going down, because the more you think about it, the more it breaks your brain. So Emil is Ratatosk, who is, like, one of the primordial beings who guards, basically, like, the gate to creation. So that's pretty first with a capital F. I don't know if we can find a Crusader type character in the series who has more primacy than that. But I'm interested now, so I'm going to be sitting with that and thinking about it. Like, if we had to answer the question, who is the first Crusader in the Tales series, and what does that mean? What would our answer be? Tales of the Abyss, like I've talked about, is a game that's very concerned with mysticism and the act of creation, but that's not something that we really see in the game. I guess you could kind of say Yulia fills that role with creating the score, but she's not really a main character in the sense I was thinking about. I guess maybe Jade, with the way he gives rise to Famicry, you could kind of think of in that way. Ah, Drag. There's a better answer, and it's from a game that I haven't played. That figures. Well, I'll keep plugging through Hearts, Coach, and then I'll be on to the next one. That just means you're going to have to help me with finding my way through how to navigate and access some of these fan translations, because I think those are the only other new ones besides the Zillias that I haven't played. But we do have the Zillias to get through still, so you may well be referring to one of those. I guess this doesn't feel quite the same as what I was thinking about when I said Crusader, but I suppose there are also some, like, primordial or spiritual entities who have a place of primacy in the world. Like we have, like Origin in the Symphonia universe, and we have the Seraphim in the Desolation universe, and Maxwell and the delightfully named Seconds or Secundus in Tales of Eternia, or even Seifert in Tales of Eternia, if you want to go to even further levels of primacy, and Neroid. See, this, I warned you, this would be a rabbit hole. I will not apologize. Pretty great name for a pretty awesome character, by the way, right? Like I don't know if I'll have occasion to dwell on him and the stuff that I want to write about right away with Eternia, but oh man, what a cool little like masterclass in like taking an optional boss fight and turning it into a little short story that ties together so many pieces of the overall story and world in a super cool way. Made all the more cool by the fact that it's totally missable and optional. And just the fact that like that a god of time says like, yeah, you can fight me whenever you want. When makes no difference to me. So cool. Like he's the same model, you mean? Or are you saying you think he's like literally the same guy? Oh, and on the Abyss question, yeah, Grail. I think so this came up when I was doing my research for my article on Tales of the Abyss and Kabbalah. It must come from like supplemental sources because for the life of me I wasn't able to find it in the game, but there's a decent amount of information and stuff that's been established in terms of what the world looked like kind of prior to Yulia's reading of the score and the formation of Doth. There were, I think, 6 or 7 different like competing kingdoms that were then consolidated following the events of like Yulia coming to rise as the spiritual leader. So yeah, I think it could very easily be constructed into its own kind of like story or game or what have you, in kind of a similar way to something like the Karlan War, right? That's one of the things that these stories are so great for. They're almost all, if not all, predicated on characters coming to terms with the deep lore and history of their world's ancient past, which oftentimes sounds just as epic as what's happening now in the current terms of the narrative, and which we would so love for so many reasons to be able to peek into as gamers and play for ourselves. That's true. He does have some of the personality traits. Oh, you're getting me interested in that. Is there a fun theory that we could weave together that says Daus is actually not just a time traveler, but in fact the spirit of time from another world? Or maybe just from the fabric of the multiverse, if you want to say that all of these worlds are enmeshed in the same like 4-dimensional space-time continuum or what have you. There's the skip.
The girls are waiting for us. Let's hurry back to the Amarcian Enclave.
I wonder if Sophie's gonna be okay after this.
Asbel.
Richard, when someone dies, that's the end of their friendship, right?
Are you thinking about Sophie?
Yeah. What happens after we pass away? We would just end up becoming some distant memory for those left behind. If everything ends up disappearing in the end, what's the point of all this? And where would that leave Sophie? She would end up being all alone, without any of us to support her.
Asbel, let's not worry about such things now. That day is far in the future.
You don't know that. We can die tomorrow, or even today.
Oh, bro.
Asbel, calm yourself. Even if that happened, all we can do is value the time we have with Sophie. That way, a part of us will remain in her heart after we're gone.
Do you really think so?
Yes, I truly do. Now come on, let's go see Sophie.
I mentioned this when we started Act 4, but I'm really interested to see whether these meditations on death culminate or include a character death in the party, because we didn't see that in the main game, but it has happened in other Tales games, so it's not without precedent. And it would be really interesting and powerful and challenging if in the post-game of a game that for all intents and purposes was already complete, a character in the party died. I get the sense that's probably not where it's going, but it would be really interesting and provocative if it did go in that direction. The soldier assigned here is on medical leave. Poor guy was damn near killed in a monster attack. Sweet gravy, you saved us, but what was that horrid monster? Sweet gravy. That's a good point, Grail. Yeah, I guess I don't think of that as character death intuitively because she comes back pretty immediately and we find out that it is the same Sophie who's come back. But I think that's just my own prejudice worming its way in. So you're right. I think in every sense that matters, that's a character death. And a kind of character death, I would further say, that would make a permanent kind of character death where we don't see them come back maybe even more interesting in Tales of Graces than it would be in another game, because we have this model of death as something that can be lived through. So then to see it as something which is final in the way that Asbel's dad's death was final would be an interesting point of contrast and make for some good conversations, I think. Yeah, I think that's one of the really cool ways in which these games play with the idea of history and how things move from lived events to stories, Grail. Because again, the same thing could be said of the Carlon War, right? Presumably lots of people were involved. A great example, right? Like the random nameless guy who kills Martel but plays such a key role in events, where the only named characters we really know of are Martel and Mythos and Ewan and Kratos, but presumably there were a ton of other people there and a bunch of people who would make for really interesting and compelling supporting characters to flesh out the world. Just so, like, again, my memory of this is a little hazier because it didn't really come into my study of Tales of the Abyss as such, but I think in, like, the ancient world of Aldrin, you have Yulia, and you have some of the, like, the leaders who would go on to found Doth and Malkuth and Kimlaska Landvaldir, and I think even those two like separate nations before they came together as Kimlaska Landvaldir, but very much again like these figureheads of history to which we assign all the meaning of the narrative, even though presumably there were a ton more players involved. Similar to how, if you think about the way in which the mythos of Tales of Symphonia is handed down by the time we get to Dawn of the New World. Forget about supporting characters. Most of the characters in that world only know about like Lloyd and maybe Colette, maybe Regal, depending on who you ask. They don't even know about the totality of the party of characters that we controlled during Tales of Symphonia, right? So interesting to see who gets to become a hero or even memorable in history versus who doesn't. Yeah, that's another great comparison. Absolutely, Grail. All right, we are off to the Enclave again. Away we go. Yeah, I had this really fun digression today because this isn't, it's not what I was thinking I would focus on for this study I'm putting out on Fantasia, but like I said, I got down this rabbit hole of philosophy of space-time, and just kind of the history of our various understanding of physics and fundamental physics and the way the world works. And I got myself into this hole of thinking about like four-dimensional space-time, and then thinking about time travelers like Dowse and how they would perceive time and people's lives. And I found myself thinking like, oh, is Dowse actually a villain at all? Like, does he maybe just not understand that there's anything bad about killing people because he's been time traveling for so long that to them, like to him, they all just look like these various space-time worms on like the overall four-dimensional grid, and where those worms start and end don't really matter. And then my head started melting a little and I decided I should take a break. Oh, Chrissy, so nice to see you. I honestly thought you wouldn't be hanging for as long as you did, so I appreciate you sticking around. Yes, definitely. Please let us know how your research goes. Congratulations on moving on to the next stage. I know that is hard fought and hard won, and you know I'm wishing you the best. And come back whenever you can. Be excited to hear how it's gone and to think more video game thoughts with you. Cheers. Oh, to Pascal's house. Okay, my bad. They're always hiding in the last place I look. I went to Fourier's house first last time. These girls are slippery ones. Oh, that's fun, Grail. Well, I'll tell you, I don't play in time travel stories very often, but I wrote this line, which I certainly don't take to be an original insight, but it's how I think about time travel. I started my analysis of Scarlet Nexus, another great Bandai Namco game by the same creative director who did Symphonia and Tales of the Abyss. I started by saying the best time travel stories are not about time travel, by which I mean, I think the kind of time travel stories that I love, and this extends more broadly to a lot of sci-fi and fantasy, I think they have a really clear, like, metaphorical meaning behind time travel, because oftentimes, like, at least to my mind, there are so many time travel stories that get really caught up in the mechanics and the minutia of time travel in a way that just kind of obsesses over the details of time travel for time travel's sake rather than using it as a vehicle for a particular kind of story. And that to me feels very hard to follow and hard to get value out of. But every now and then, like, I will find a time travel story, and Scarlet Nexus is one of these. I would say Tales of Phantasia is also one of these, where it feels very clear what the narrative impact of the time travel is and what it symbolizes in terms of these characters' journey and the lesson that the story wants its audience to take from it. And then it can be really quite magical. And even if you don't quite understand how it works, you can understand what it means sometimes, all the better for that. So I hope you have a vision of what you want to say with your time travel. And if you do, I'm really excited to learn about what that is. So, you know, I love hearing about your work and what you're thinking about.
Welcome back, fellas. How are things in Strata?
We were able to dispatch the monsters there. However, more could appear at any moment. It's time for us to strike at the source.
Okay, then let's boogie off to Fodra as soon as we can.
Hey, Sophie.
Oh, remind me about that pin I put in Lambda after this. I forgot to say what I wanted to say.
But it would just be a lie. I'll die before you, and there's no getting around it. But there's still plenty of time for us to deal with life together.
Together.
I've given this some thought, and if you want a family, I think we should give you one. From now on, your name will be Sophie Lhant, and I'll be your father.
Oh,
Sophie Lhant.
that's so sweet.
From this
It's not what I was
forward,
expecting.
You and I are family.
So, you're adopting Sophie into the House of Lhant?
I'll take care of her, just like my father took care of Hubert and me. Even now, his memory helps me in hard times. So I hope my memory can do the same for you. Although I have to admit, it feels a little weird being your parent. You used to be bigger than me, remember?
It's not weird, it's happy.
Yeah, I really like this Grail. I have a thought on it that we can talk about afterwards.
Well, if you're Asbel's daughter, I guess that makes you my niece.
So you're gonna be Uncle Little Bro. Now we just need to find Sophie a nice aunt.
And that's the only title available to Hubert from this point on.
What?
Her little dance is still my favorite thing.
To eliminate the monsters and secure our future.
Humanity's very existence
Ah!
is a crime.
See, when least we expected it. What'd I say?
They can never promise forever.
So that's interesting. She also grays out the world. I had forgotten about that, Grail, when we were talking about what it is for Lambda to do that when he's conversing with Asbel in Asbel's mind.
Do not trust their ambiguous words.
Who are you? Why did you say that?
Yeah, and in what sense were those words ambiguous? And also, who are you? Or a conversation stopper, depending on whom you're talking to. Oh, I want to read this title, and then we'll take all the pins out of all those grenades we wanted to talk about. Sophie Lhant? Sophie Lhant. At long last, Sophie has an official last name. Currently, she's Asbel's only daughter. Currently, I love that. I love everything about this. I'm glad also that we looked at the title because it underscores what I was going to say. So let's start here and then we can work back to what I was going to say about Lambda. So I loved this scene, and the thing that I picked up on right away was, to me, it was such a nice mirror to the way in which Asbel gave Sophie her name Sophie when he was a kid. Because then, remember, that was happening in the context of this childhood arc where Asbel was almost naming Sophie and taking her around with him and being protective of her as one would treat a pet. We talked about that, how he was kind of treating her like one would a dog. Because he's a kid, he doesn't know better. He doesn't really understand how to relate to this being that has this limited capacity to socialize or act like a human. And yet, bringing her into that fold of friendship made her future development possible in ways that Asbel himself, I would say, didn't even understand at the time. And so now, at the other end of their journey, when Asbel understands so much more clearly himself and the nature of relationships and what it takes to empower someone to develop in a positive way, like he's doing with Lambda, to fully recognize Sophie and see who she wants to be and what she is and the friction between those two things, and not trying to talk around it or ignore it, but face it head on like he did with her and say, look, I can't lie to you. You're different than we are, and you will live in a different way than we're going to live, but we can still have a special meaning in each other's lives, and I'm going to give you a special kind of name and a special kind of relationship with me to make that possible. Shows at the same time the exact same kind of spirit that Asbel had when he was a kid, with a radically different and more robust kind of wisdom undergirding it. And I think the reason I said I love that title is because it's so magically telling in that spirit of what I'm talking about, that it refers to what just happened as giving Sophie at long last an official last name, because it is like yet another renaming of Sophie, right? First he gave her her first name in the way that was motivated in all the senses that we just talked about, and now he's given her a last name in a very different sense, and one that once again makes possible further development, but in a more holistic and spiritually satisfying way. I love that so much. Yeah, I gotta say too, Grail, on that score, like, I'm interested because in that last scene at the end of Act 3, it looked like Sophie had found a way to be human and grow up, and so my intuition had been, okay, the way Act 4 is being set up with Sharia as Asbel's one and only love interest, maybe it's going to be a bait and switch where Sophie figures out how to become human, and then it's Sophie and Asbel who get married. So I really wasn't expecting him to adopt Sophie as his daughter, which has me all the more interested in whatever is going to unfold from here, because clearly I was reading things in the wrong way. Did that not make sense, what I said? Am I crazy for thinking that? I feel like that was a pretty reasonable way, all things considered, to be thinking about it. Oh, now I feel like you're being sarcastic. Maybe I was right on the money all along, and the game is just trying to mislead me here. Who knows? Only one way to tell, which is by continuing to play this. Before that, moving backwards to the pin that I put in Asbel and Lambda, and it was a minute ago at this point, but I think it merits going back to just because it says a lot about Asbel's growth and the spirit that we're talking about with how he's treating Sophie. So you might or might not remember this, but I made a big deal out of that line Asbel had when they were returning from Fodra for the first time and kind of having the mid-game resolutions about how they were going to take on Richard, because the question on everyone's mind then was, is Richard really a bad person, or is he just being controlled by Lambda? How much should we trust in Richard and try to protect him as our friend? And Asbel said, I believe in Richard. I believe in him because I must. And at the time, what we were thinking about was, well, Asbel's whole sense of self at that point was still very tenuous, and he was still depending a lot on his own sense of self coming from this sense of stability he had found in the friendship with Sophie and Richard when he was young. So it was almost like he needed, from a purely pragmatic standpoint, to trust in Richard, because otherwise Asbel's whole world would fall apart. And that's not a very deep kind of trust. That's more of saying, look, I need to trust this guy for my own sake, because otherwise everything else I believe in is going to disappear like an illusion. Contrast that with what he was saying much more simply and flatly about Lambda to Richard, when Richard was saying, man, should you really be using this power? Do you really trust Lambda? And Asbel just said very simply, yeah, I trust him. I don't need a reason to. I believe in him, and I can feel it in him. To me, that reads as something that is just much more in keeping with Asbel at the end of that third act, this kind of just enlightened willingness to extend faith to someone else, because that faith is what is going to make it possible for them to develop and forge relationships and support themselves and support others in the way that Lambda seems to be doing with this power that he's giving Asbel, right? So giving trust to get trust in the way that we see across so many Tales games, but especially Tales of Graces. So another cool little nuance and quirk of language that we can heap on the pile with all of the others in Tales of Graces to show how these characters are continuing to develop. And also, lastly, I love that little synopsis of how you're thinking about time travel, Grail. That has me very interested to hear more about that project once you develop it further. You and your ideas, man, I'm telling you. I might be able to write reams and reams of analysis, but I have so much admiration for you and your creative mind. All right, we got stuff. What stuff are we doing, Grail? Point us in the right direction while we watch this skit.
Sophie, which is better, this machine or that machine? The one on the right. Okay, but what about these two? Left.
What are you both up to?
I heard that everyone gave wedding presents to Fermat, so I figured I need to give her something too.
Hence you're tinkering with the machines?
Yep, I need a bunch of presents. This one's an automatic shoulder massager. That one's an automatic egg cracker. And this one's an automatic bread kneader.
Those aren't very romantic presents for a newlywed.
Really? Aw, man.
Still, as long as you put your heart into it, I'm sure anything you had in mind would suffice.
Anything?
Aww.
Yes. In fact, all you really need to do is show up and grace her with that radiant smile of yours.
I love you.
Gal, let's go see Fermat. You can show her your radiant smile. All right, it's decided. Let's go right now so I can give her my biggest grin.
No, wait a moment. Not the Too late.
Might be my favorite line reading of Hubert's to date.
To have a chance to gaze upon even the worst of your smiles.
Oh, man. Oh, we're really going all in on this. I was not expecting Hubert to be so explicit with himself and the audience about his feelings for Pascal. Pretty unusual for a Tales game. Or a JRPG, for that matter.
Sophie, want some of this?
Thank you. Sophie, are you cold? I'll get you a blanket. No, I'm okay.
Sophie, are you tired? It'll be a while before we reach Fodra. You should try to get some rest.
It's okay. I'm not sleepy yet.
Sophie, if anything ever troubles you, please feel free to talk to me about it.
Thank you. Captain, Pascal, everyone is being overly nice to me. I'll be nice to you too, Sophie. Give me a hug.
Sophie, let's make out.
Everyone, come here. Your fawning over Sophie is freaking her out. For heaven's sake, think about what you're doing.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, Sophie. It's okay. It made me happy. Thank you, everyone.
We're done here. Disperse.
It's not like that, Captain. But I do get scared when everyone's nice. Because I know it will end one day.
Oh, Sophie. Everyone give her a hug at the same time. Alright, so Velenik to Zavhert to Lhant. Sounds like a plan. Oh, we got all kinds of places to visit. I'm excited.
Oh, I forgot.
What is it, Asbel?
There's something I have to do back at Barona Castle. I need to file a report to Dallin.
You are going alone?
Don't worry. I won't run off by myself.
Good.
Now that you mention it, I left something behind at Barona Castle too.
Yeah?
Then you have to go back for it, right?
Yes, perhaps I should. I wouldn't mind making a quick stop there.
Then it's settled. Let's get going.
Let's go.
In truth, what I left behind is too heavy to carry. What I left behind are memories.
Oh, my man. It's a very Malik thing to say. But base game Malik, not so much Act 4 Malik. Okay, we're going to the inn. I do quite like it when skits point the way to side content like that. I was appreciating that in Tales of Hearts because they do that quite reliably. And I feel like it's a good way of motivating those side missions in the game, at least when they are missions that come about through the intentions of characters in the party, as opposed to things you just have to stumble upon without feeling like you have to really pick yourself out of the narrative and go on a scavenger hunt as a player to make sure you haven't missed anything. Ah, here we go. He's a Shakespearean king. Of course he's good for monologues.
Time flies. You're a man now in all but name.
You promised to buy me your favorite cocktail when I'm older.
Did I now? It's been a long time since I really enjoyed a stiff drink. I used to drink to forget my troubles, but now it just brings them back.
No, Malik.
If I'd only been honest with myself about my feelings, she might still be alive.
Captain?
Oh, sorry. My heart gets a little weak when I drink. Time for some air.
I've been looking for you, Malik.
Wait, you're...
You are Malik Caesar, correct? Special attaché to the Chancellor? Let me get straight to the point. My name is Ulycia, and we need your help.
But I don't... What is this? What kind of help?
I cannot say more here. If you are willing to listen, come to the location indicated on this paper.
It looks just like her, right? I'm not crazy.
Also, I have a message for you. If you refuse,
It's been a while since we saw those
petals will fall a second time.
flashbacks.
What is that supposed to mean?
No idea. I was simply asked to relay the message.
This sounds like revolutionary business. My days of bringing about change through force have passed me by. Find someone else.
Very well. I'll pass your answer on.
Captain, did you know that woman?
She looks like a woman who died a long time ago.
Yes, so I'm not crazy. Not for that reason,
Zavra
anyway.
Plaza, is it? If you refuse, the lilac petals will fall a second time.
This town seems brighter and more energetic than the last time we were here.
The whole country has grown a bit richer thanks to Pascal's hot water distribution system.
It doesn't appear the water has arrived here yet.
Right. They're scheduled to begin installing the pipes at this location soon.
It pains me to say this in your presence, Malik, but I fear Chancellor Eigen's government may not hold for much longer. The invasions of Lhant, the experiments on Forbernir, his dictatorial ways and short-term political calculations have pushed this country into a corner. It's holding on for now, but I truly worry for the future of Fendel. I find it difficult to foresee what's up ahead.
I have taken responsibility to see this development plan through, no matter what happens to the government. I assure you, my associates and I will turn things around in Fendel.
For anyone but you, Captain Malik, I'd have my doubts. But you've already done fantastic work with the hot water system.
Your Highness is most kind.
You guys haven't forgotten about Pascal by any chance, have you?
I think we just did.
You know, I completely agree with you, Grail. I think there's more than a few reasons that we kept going back to Malik for like 4 or 5 streams in a row in terms of the way in which the game handles him reflecting on his past in quiet solitude and not bringing the rest of the party into it. It's actually another interesting shade of what we were talking about on Wednesday when we were discussing the way in which games will sometimes take main characters out of the story for really compelling and interesting narrative reasons. Like, for instance, Richard being turned into the main antagonist here, or Zavid flitting in and out of the story and never being quite in focus in Tales of Zestiria and Tales of Berseria, and yet lending so much to that story. And you can, throw a dart against a dartboard and hit like probably 3 or 4 other examples in the Tales series. But I think Malik is interesting too, because in one sense he's always there, but in another sense his involvement in what he's really working through is similarly outside the scope of the main narrative. And like we talked about, as you say, Grail, ad nauseum, there are really good thematically central reasons in Tales of Graces why he doesn't involve the rest of the party. It's because those experiences of his only exist and pertain to his character relative to those other people who were involved in those experiences, and no one else in this party had anything to do with his past as a revolutionary. So except and unless random tidbits of that past come up when he's helping to teach Asbel how to become a man or something tactical like that, the broad sum of all those past experiences stays just within Malik's mind. So I think it paints a really interesting color in the story, something that we see in other characters, but I do think that Malik is kind of the poster child for it, of what it is for characters to be working through their own stories that are like isolated from those of the rest of the party, even as they're contributing to this overall main story that constitutes the game. And what does that mean for the character's development? What does it mean for how we understand the story as a whole versus the individual arcs of these characters? in a lot of ways, if you're asking those questions about how this game deals with relationships, I think Malik is a key cipher to making sense of the answers. He's also a key cipher to making sense of hidden mystic arts, which was what I was going to try to do my best to go back to, just in case we stumble into any battles on these side quests. So we were looking for Sonic Mount Adept. All right. And I will try my level best if it comes up the next time it does to get that done for us. All right, so we knocked this off the list. I think I saved, but no, I didn't save. All right, perfect. And now we will go to Zavhert. I think the reason that we feel it now too, and I might have said this on Wednesday, is that like he really doesn't talk that much because he's working through things in his own head during the main game. My guess is if you did a comparison of like the number of his lines versus the number of lines that the other main party members have, he'd probably be below average on that count. Whereas now he's at a different point in his arc, and like we were talking about last time, the other characters, especially the younger men, are at a different point in their development where it makes much more sense in that network of party member relationships and concerns for Malik to be very proactively offering his guidance and perspective to other people in the party. And so we see him pretty actively talking and contributing in a whole range of conversations, which was not the norm in the first 3 acts.
Hold the meaning of memories of youth.
Ah, more flower meanings. I feel like we're back in the desolation.
The lilac petals will fall a second. Wait, so that's what it means.
Captain?
She's in danger. We have to find her. He's here! Chancellor Eigen is here!
Is it an assassination attempt?
The Chancellor has come to visit his people.
Yeah.
Damn!
Captain!
Why did you...
What is the meaning of this, Malik? What? She's...
This woman is Ulicia, one of the few revolutionaries still active in this country.
How can you people associate with this man? He's a government dog.
That's a lie! He isn't like that!
Peace, Asbel. I understand why she would see me that way. The people of this nation finally have hope back in their lives. But the common good means nothing to those who seek power. You are no different than the government you claim to oppose. If this continues, the people of Fendel will eventually lose their hope.
We fight to free the people from the boot heel of government oppression.
Your comrades were ready to let you die to achieve a goal. If the revolution won't take care of its own, how will it possibly look out for the people?
You understand nothing.
You remind me of Chancellor Eigen's late daughter.
What?
I loved her. Once.
I notice, exactly like we were reminding ourselves about our whole analysis of Malik. Now, I think for the first time in the game, he's voicing out loud his love for the Chancellor's daughter, and he's doing so because now it pertains to a conflict and a relationship that he's engaged in the moment, and he can actually do some material good by bringing it up. The context has made it appropriate to mention in a way that it hasn't been in any of the previous many hours we've spent in this game and with Malik.
Your friends thought that if you approached me, I would agree to help them. But when that failed, they thrust a suicide mission upon you.
It doesn't matter. I'm just as dead now as if I'd finished it. Come, Eigen! execute me and see how a true patriot faces death.
Very well, if that is your wish. For tonight, we will hold you in custody.
You'll what?
Tomorrow morning, you will board a ship. Once it is at sea, you will be informed of your destination.
I see. So it's to be exile then.
Do you find this acceptable, Chancellor?
Do as you wish. Just take her from my sight. When I see her face, I can't help but think of my daughter.
It reminds me of Mythos' line about Tabitha. Jesus. Heavy for a side quest, even by Tale standards.
I am old, Malik, and I'm getting older. It seems I spend all my time thinking on better days.
Then we must do all we can to ensure this is a new age for the people. You love this country, Chancellor. When the people see that, they will rise to defend her. I promise you.
Indeed. From now on, I shall work with the people to see that they want for nothing.
That was such a beautiful and tight little side quest too, because like think about the different layers of meaning for Ulysia. Like we see her, and like Malik and like the Chancellor, we immediately think, why does this girl look so much like the dead daughter of the Chancellor whom Malik loved, and whose name I'm forgetting, by the way, so if you remember, Grail, feel free to let me know, because it's only come up a handful of times in the game, and for the life of me, I can't keep it in my head. But so we're reaching for this explanation of what she has to do with that girl. But really, the only thing she has to do with that girl is she just happens to look like her. Lorithia. Okay, I thought that was, but I wasn't sure if I was crossing the wires in my head with the Xenoblade wires, because Lorithia, of course, is a big part of Xenoblade Chronicles as well. But so all that Ulysia had to do with anything was that she happened to look like Lorithia. And so the revolutionaries used that resemblance in order to get the better of Malik, and probably also to try to disarm the Chancellor for their own purposes. And so what a nice little experiential moment for us as players to share in with Malik, trying to reach for this explanation that isn't there in terms of some deeper connection between them, and then to realize, like Malik's key insight, you know, we're just reaching back into the past. We're looking at the memories and the context that we already have from Malik's tragic history, when we should just be looking at this girl in the moment, why she's been sent to do what she's trying to do, and how we can make things better for her. So that very Tales message of saying, like, yeah, the past and history, that can have value, but only insofar as it informs the present and can make things better for the people who are dealing with their lot in the world right now. And so for Malik to recognize, like, you know, both sides of these conflicts, they're so entrenched in their own beliefs and hung up on the past in a way that they're never going to be able to see what's in front of them. And so I really read that like exiling of Ulysia almost as him trying to give her the same gift that he gave himself by walking away from it and saying, no, you gotta try to figure out what life means for you in a different context, so that you can free yourself from all of these people who are trying to control you and pull you back into their own obsession with the past. Feels like a great moment of enlightenment and like a full realization of development for Malik, kind of like the terminus of his character's path and arc, even more so than we saw at the end of Act 3 when he was still really dwelling on his own past. Now it feels like he's really processed that in a pretty powerful way. What was the title that he got? Yeah, it's a good question about the Chancellor Grail, and we've kind of been wrestling with how to read him throughout the whole of this game, right? Because it seems like a very impoverished and stark country, and we talked a lot about how it seems to have some parallels with the USSR, where a lot of people are forced to work for meager rations and can't even heat their homes. So it doesn't seem like things are great, but it does seem like the Chancellor, at least in the glimpses we get of him, seems to have a good head on his shoulders and is just, as I was saying, and I think this is why he's such a great compliment to Malik, he seems to be really entrenched in the gears of this system that's almost crumbling under its own weight. You get the sense that this empire or republic, whatever the governing body is, has been around for too long. They've been dealing with this Elith shortage forever. Their Valkanus isn't as efficient as the other ones, or at least it wasn't until Pascal came along and figured out how to conduct heat in a new way. And so he's just kind of desperately digging his heels in order to try to make the same failing organization work, because he can't see another way to support people in the country. And it took something like that, an assassination attempt from someone who didn't even really have any stake in the fight and was just kind of parroting the ideals of these revolutionaries who had been created because of him, for the Chancellor to realize, like, look, I got to figure out how to move beyond these issues of espionage and political subterfuge and all of these things that have only been causing more problems and more disparity, and just figure out how to make things better for my people. And I think the fact that he recognizes that as much as anything else tells me, like, there's hope for him. And like Ulysia, I think the lesson of the game is that whether you're on the winning side or the losing side, or the side of the entrenched government or the side of the revolutionaries, you can be just as caught up in vacuous ideals as the other side of the aisle is, and you're just as free to move beyond them and exile yourself from them for the sake of yourself. In florigraphy, the symbology of flowers, I guess, lilac means memories of youth. That's a cool word. I didn't know there was a term for that. A lot can be learned from the language of flowers. Wow, and what a cool way to encapsulate everything we were just talking about in two much more poetic and succinct sentences. Tremorous, celestial, etc. Ooh, I'm excited and interested in that. A new mystic art for him, it looks like. Got it. Okay, Barona first and then Lhant. Sounds good. To Barona we go. With a name like that, it has to be fun, right? Okay, so were they saying... Did they say where they wanted to go in Barona? Did they say the castle? I feel like they said the castle. This is not the way to the castle. The castle's up there. Got it. Ah, there we go. As foretold.
I have to speak with Duke Dallin, so wait here, okay?
Okay.
That's right, he's going to talk with the Duke.
Seriously, don't wander off or you might get lost.
And you're my child now, so I can't allow that.
I'm fine. Richard's here.
All right, all right.
Asbel worries about you a lot, doesn't he?
Also, this is a corollary of what I was saying before in terms of the meaning of Asbel giving Sophie a last name, but that little moment he had with her made me think of this too. Like from Asbel's perspective, one way to crystallize the development he's had is he now like understands the difference between what it is to care for a pet and what it is to care for a human child. And Sophie has really helped him to learn that, right? Because I think in the same sense that she's recognized that there's something missing in her conception of herself as a human, Asbel has also learned what it takes to recognize the humanity in others, especially those who feel they've been denied it, like Lambda and like Sophie. And in learning and understanding that, he's also gained the ability to give that sense of humanity to people, whether by taking Lambda within himself or by naming Sophie his child and heir.
She likes to keep me safe. But sometimes I want to be alone.
I can see that. Hey, maybe you'd like to come visit my secret hideout.
Oh, secret hideout.
A hideout?
Indeed.
But I'm supposed to wait for Asbel.
I think it's the wings, right? Like the way like an angel of Crucius's wings would flap. I think that's what it's trying to emulate. Because the hilt isn't moving. It's just the wing as far as I can see.
I'll leave a message with the guards.
But yeah, it's definitely an interesting effect. Oh, thank God. I was kind of worried he was taking her back to the catacombs. We'll go to my secret hideout. You know, that place where all that traumatic stuff happened to us as kids.
When I was young, I was always surrounded by people. Sometimes I wanted a place where I could just be alone.
So you built a secret fort?
Right. I was going through some tough times, and when things got to be too much, I'd come down here.
What did you do?
Sometimes I'd wrap myself in a blanket and eat apples until I wanted to pop. Sometimes I'd read silly adventure stories.
What is the meaning of "until I wanted to pop"? I've never heard that turn of phrase before. Like, eat so much I felt my stomach could explode? Is that the idiom that we're working with?
It calmed me somehow. Gave me this.
Maybe it's a Britishism.
So where's the fort?
Someone must have cleared it out.
Can I make a new one?
Oh.
Of course.
Loving this, by the way. For reasons that are probably obvious, but we can talk about them afterwards. Great sound effects, too.
All done.
It's great, Sophie. Really great.
No.
But listen. You know Asbel will always be around as long as you're in Lhant. But if he ever starts to drive you a little crazy, you can just come here.
Can I wrap myself in a blanket and read flower books and eat crablets?
Sure, if you want.
Oh.
And once you feel better, you can go back to Asbel. I know he can be a little much, but it's just because he cares for you. Don't forget that.
But if this is my fort, what happens to yours?
I'm an adult now, so I can't run away from things like I used to. This hideout is yours now.
Okay, but you can come back too. You can come here. Then we can read books and eat snacks together.
That sounds nice. Thanks, Sophie.
There you are. What are you guys doing down here? What?
It's only healthy for everybody to have a few secrets.
I guess.
Come on, let's go.
Hey, wait! What's going on?
Don't worry about it.
Benign conspirator. Let's look at the title for that. Richard the Righteous. All right. I'll get to your messages in a second, Grail. I just want to talk about that scene for a moment. How tragic that the idea of secret societies being inherently evil has taken hold among the populace. Oh, I love that. See, oh, but he still has to learn shooting stars. That's worthwhile. Oh, does he have Burning Phoenix on that? That's awesome. Very cool. I'm looking forward to that. I think that was maybe in my top 5 for favorite scenes from this whole game, and it made me all the happier to be playing Act 4 because it really felt like something that was warranted from the end of Act 3, but which we never saw. And seeing it now, I almost feel like Kid Aaron was robbed by playing through only to the end of Act 3 and not going any further, because there's this idea implicit in the end of Act 3 that Asbel and Sophie and Richard are going to figure out how to become friends again after Lambda has been healed and his grip on Richard has been released and everything like that. But it's kind of hard, given everything you've seen in the story, to just trust in that. And you can say, well, you know, Asbel learned the lesson of extending beneficent trust to Lambda, so we should do that as an audience too. And that's all well and good, but I think it's so special and cathartic and healing to see this unique, quiet moment of Sophie and Richard on their own terms, being friends in a quiet place, and Richard sharing his past with Sophie in order to help her. That is such a powerful testament to the ability for friendships to reemerge and blossom and allow people to heal each other. But then also for that not only to be showing the bond between them deepening and being restored and all of that good stuff, but for that to be happening in the context of Richard showing her a place from his own childhood and past where she can be alone as a form of sanctuary in order to better understand herself and then bring her best self to her relationship with Asbel and the other people she cares about. What a fucking cool 180 from everything that Richard went through with Lambda, where Lambda just bullied Richard into believing everyone is going to betray you. There's no value in relationships. So you should just retreat into total isolation and wall yourself off from everyone. Whereas now Richard, healed from Lambda and brought into the fold of all his friends, is able to say, no, there is value in solitude, but only insofar as it helps you to be more at home with yourself so that then you can be a better version of yourself in the relationships with the people you care about. That, I know I'm using this word enlightenment all the time, every which way, but notice it looks a little different for every character too. What Asbel has learned in dealing with Lambda is a little different from what Malik has learned in letting his past go and helping people to deal with themselves in the present, is a little different from how Richard has changed his mind on the meaning of solitude and how it can help people and reinforce connections rather than severing them. And it adds such a nice coda to me to what it is that Richard learned from Lambda and how those initial friendships that started the whole game can actually deepen to something more substantive than the admittedly superficial relationships that the kids had when they first carved their names on the trees. And I get why that couldn't have been in the base game, because it needed to be something that came after the resolution of everything with Lambda. But man, I take that scene as reason why Act 4 should not be seen as optional. That's so powerful and so essential, I would say, to grounding our understanding of the overall story. Really cool. Yes, yeah, running away. What a succinct way to describe the entirety of the main game, Grail. Couldn't agree more. Yep. But also notice, because I was wondering, like, oh, is he just going to pass that on to Sophie and give her a way of just being alone on her own? Because that's kind of Lambda-ish too, even if it's well-intentioned. But then Sophie immediately shot back to him. But you know, Richard, you can still come back if you ever want to, and it can be our thing. And that says everything it has to about how it's something that comes out of friendship rather than a need to run away. So cool. All right, so Sophie has a new outfit now. Let's check that out. Absolutely. Toast of the town. Oh, nice. The outfit she got is Sophie Lhant, which we know, you might remember from the spoilers way back when in the Calyx of Tales of Zestiria, where she showed up and introduced herself as Sophie Lhant in this outfit. Which is hopefully not a spoiler, because I'm guessing that if you didn't know what happened here and you were here for Tales of Zestiria, you probably forgot in the giant slog we had through Tales of Berseria and the base game of Tales of Graces. That's one of the ways in which those cameos can get around spoiling things, because there's simply too much Tales in between for you to retain it all. But now we can understand the meaning of that and appreciate her fancy new outfit. Oh, and more about your writing, Grail. Fantastic. You can always speak about your writing. You don't have to say you'd like to speak about it. I would always like you to speak about it at whatever length you want to, so no need to be brief. Let's make a sequel, a story in which the main villain is the one using the gimmick from the first book. I love that. Do we have good examples off the top of our heads of games that do that? Are there Tales games we've played through that do that? I can't really... I guess Tales of Berseria is kind of like that, because the main villain is a shepherd, but he's a shepherd of a very different color than Saray. But yeah, I love that. Like, totally turning on its head the mechanism by which, like, the world was saved or goodness was achieved in the first game, and asking, like, what is it for the villain to take control of that? Very cool and interesting idea. And so if you're not motivated enough, let me further motivate you. You should write about that. All right, so we did this. I think that was all we had to do here, right? So gonna head back to Lhant now for our last few minutes of this wonderful Friday adventure. In Lhant, perfect. All right. I know I said this on Wednesday, but it bears repeating since this is our second time back. I missed this. It is so nice to be back studying these masterpieces with the thoughtful Praxis gamers.
Peaceful day in Lhant.
It's all thanks to you and your hard work, Asbel.
No. This is the result of all the years of labor my father put in. Now I see what a lordship means. Work done today might not take shape for another 10 or 20 years.
Yeah.
It definitely makes me wonder what I should be doing now to help everyone down the road.
Hey, Asbel. I know it's not really my business, but the item shop proprietor complained of being low on stock because he can't get his wholesale permit renewed.
What? But I thought I already signed all of this month's paperwork.
Asbel, the soldiers are on my case for not receiving their salaries this month. I've told them it's not my responsibility, but...
Wait, seriously?
Asbel, Grandpa told me to tell you that paperwork is piling up in your study and you need to do something about it.
Man, have I really been away from my duties for that long?
Come on, you'd better get back to your office.
Yeah, I guess I'll head to the office.
Stay strong, Asbel.
Ah, the glorious minutia of leadership. To the study. For many stars. Stars on stars. Just call me a Yu-Gi-Oh monster. I'm chasing ever higher numbers of stars. Oh, also owned by Sharia's house? Let's do that first. Aha! Who would have thought there'd be so much to do in the childhood home of the hero after an entire journey that took him all the way across the world? Why? Why did she choose him? Oh, more about how everyone in the world wants to be with Sharia? She must still hate me for what I did. Oh, cruel fate, how you mock me. You need to get over her, Lord Raymond. It's starting to seem pathetic. Oh, and I suppose you're just going to forget her and move on? It can't be helped. Her life is hers to do with as she pleases. And besides, it's not like we could compete with him. Damn him. If I knew this was coming, I would have killed him when I had the chance. Perhaps it's not too late. No! Grown men sharing a moment to discuss old loves. If that's not a sign that peace has returned to this town, I don't know what is. Malik. Leave us! An uncouth boor such as yourself couldn't possibly understand such matters. You wound me, Raymond. This uncouth boor has forgotten more about lost love than you will ever know. Perhaps you would allow me to join your discussion. I never expected a man like you would have such a past. I'd love to hear all about it. Ha! I have lost nothing, Malik. There is still hope she might come around. Now. Nothing cures the sting of a lost love like good companionship and fine drink. Come, let's finish this discussion over a couple of cocktails. Which I just have in my pocket. Very well. All right. Wow, love sure is complicated, huh? Yes, it is. Amazing. It's equally funny to me that that seems to be the single side moment in Act 4 that they decided not to voice. How dare they not give Jameson Price more lines? We all have to settle for my awful Jameson Price impression instead. Alright, to the study. Pretty good timing. We can wrap up the side stuff in Lhant and then, well, who knows, Grail, you can be the arbiter if there are even more side quests, but more or less we'll probably be ready to continue with the main story when we resume on Monday. Oh yeah, double stars! Look at that! Let's start with the one by the bookcase. That's odd. I didn't think Dad would keep a reference book on a shelf. That is no mere reference book. It is a flower journal Lord Aston gave to Lady Carey. He gave Mom a flower journal? Master Asbel, are you aware of who tended to this manor's garden? I assumed we had a gardener, or that you did it. Oh no, what have I done? Both wrong, sir. It was all done by Lord Aston himself. You're kidding. This actually reminds me of an old story. It happened about 20 years ago. Oh, this is the long cutscene you were talking about. Look, I played Xenoblade Chronicles 3. You know I'm here for long cutscenes. I hope it's voiced at least, so I don't have to do the voices. Ah, bummer. So, this is Lhant Manor. Lady Carey before she was a lady? Stop gaslighting me, dude. I'm still not over it. Oh. That speech bubble is second only to the one that I have expressed my love for before of Regal, the first time we meet him, and he's not identified, and he just has a bunch of question marks as text. Lord Aston? My name is Carey. I've just arrived from the capital. Welcome to Lhant, Lady Carey. You must be exhausted after such a long journey. Oh, no, I'm fine, thank you. Oh my, I didn't think you'd be this much older than me. Dinner is ready, Lady Carrie. Shall I accompany you to the dining room? Yes, if you please. I don't really mind the country, but there are so many insects, and can I really spend my life in a place like this? Is something amiss? No, I apologize for keeping you waiting. What am I going to do? I miss Verona already. I shouldn't have to do this just because I'm the youngest. My sisters were married to nobles from Verona and Grailside. I want to go home. Oh, man. I was not expecting to get more background on Asbel's mom several days later. Do you think she'll remain? I'm not sure. She's hardly even eating. At this rate. Hey, just what do you think you're doing? How dare you deceive me like that? I'm sure I have no idea what you're referring to. Don't play dumb with me, Jeeves. You're not Lord Aston. That guy over there is Lord Aston. How ridiculous. It's all right, Frederick. You can stop now. I'm sorry for making you do this. Also, it looked like he was working on the exact same flower during all of those sequences across those several days, which might have been a giveaway that he's not a gardener. Are you going to apologize to me or what? Apologize? To you? Why should I? What? Because you deceived me, that's why. I want nothing to do with a woman like you. Oh, who does he think he is? He's so rude and cold and rude. Refuse me? Ha! I'm going to refuse him. I'm going back to Verona, and that's the end of it. Lord Aston, are you sure you won't reconsider? Right now, I'm the only one who can protect His Highness. I have a bad feeling, sir. The Fendelian army will not hesitate to attack. That's exactly why I need to protect him, Frederick. Because... Oh, you're still here? Yes, I'm still here. What are you talking about? Did something happen? Fendel's army is invading in numbers. But that makes no sense. How did they cross the mountains? Lady Carrie, please, you must help me stop him. My master's very life is in danger. Well, isn't that a shame? I figured you'd like nothing more than being a martyr for the king. Take care of the flower bed while I'm gone. I will do no such thing. I'll be returning to the capital as soon as I can. You go have fun with your little war, or whatever it is you're doing. Learn to love the flowers. Learn to love the flowers? Are you mad? Sir Frederick, if you'll excuse me. Please, wait. It's dangerous to leave now. Fendelian soldiers could appear on the high road at any moment. This is madness. It's been 3 days now. How much longer will you keep me prisoner in this town? Please, my lady, have patience until Lord Aston returns. This book. What is it? That is Lord Aston's flower journal. This is a journal? It's as detailed as an encyclopedia. He did say something about taking care of flowers, didn't he? Maybe this journal is the reason. They withered up. Perhaps it's because of this rainy weather we've been having. How can I help them? Shield them from the rain, perhaps? I'm sorry, madam, but I have little experience in such matters. Very well. Bring me an umbrella. Perhaps you could leave the umbrella and return inside? That's okay. I'll show him. I'll record how I saved these flowers in that journal of his. In that case, Lady Carrie, I shall be on my way. No, Frederick. I need you to stay here and watch them with me. Very good, madam. His face. My life. Lord Aston. Oh, it does my heart glad to see you again. Sorry to worry you, Frederick. Did anything happen while I was away? Well, as it turns out... Oh, good. This would have been a waste of time if you'd been killed. You're still here? Could you come this way, please? "30 days is a long time to leave someone alone. Anyway, this is how I pass the days." Oh, that's awesome. See? Every missing part of the book is now complete. I kept my word, even though I barely remember giving it in the first place. So now I want to ask you something. Before you left, you told me to love the flowers. Why did you ask me to do that? What did you mean by it? Your gift for conversation is truly without peer, Lord Aston. Now speak. Was this all just a ruse to drive me away? If you can love flowers, you can love people. What does that mean? If you can't even protect a flower, you'll never protect the people you care about. Is that how you protect your people and the king? Oh, this reminds me a lot of Melchior's whole aversion to harming even a flower that the party uses to get his goat on Mount Kilaros. Those who cannot love life are unable to protect anyone. I thought that applied to you as well, but it seems I have misjudged you. Yes, well, you can start the apologies by learning my name. It's Carrie, by the way. Right. Carrie. It's a beautiful name. Oh, man. This act just keeps hitting with the side quests. Oh, I loved that too. And we're back. And a cool mirror to Malik's past, since we were talking about that before. That was a very similar kind of flashback structure, but rather than Malik just ruminating on his own memories, Asbel was getting this transmission of stories from the past that directly pertain to his own history that he hadn't known about before. So that's when he gave the flower journal to Mom? Yeah, he definitely has that protagonist energy too. Well, it makes sense it would pass through a lineage, right? Especially in a fourth act called Lineage and Legacies. Correct. If you can love flowers, you can protect people, huh? I wonder if I can do that. Both your parents loved flowers deeply, Lord Asbel. I'm sure you will be no different. Ah. Well, that little wink and nod makes me think that maybe I was on the money the first time about Asbel ending up with Sophie. I'm interested to see how this unfolds. So, I mean, obviously a great side quest in terms of seeing how Asbel's parents got together, something which is so cool and I feel like rarely seen in JRPGs, or in a lot of stories where you would like to see that. Like, contrast that with the heartbreaking moment of if you get Kratos to come back in Flanor and the way he tells Lloyd the heartbreaking story of his time with Anna and their final days a very different tone and mode of access that Asbel gets here. But also, like, it has me more excited to think about peeling back the layers of just flower symbolism in this game, but also the Tales series more broadly. I mean, like I was saying, it comes up quite a lot in Berseria, where flowers are given certain symbolic meaning. Velvet makes sense of her attachment to her home and her quest for revenge against Artorias through the flowers that cover a ball. And then, of course, Melchior, his, for all his twistedness, his adherence to the preservation of life above all else is manifested in an aversion to stepping on flowers. But then here, of course, we just had all of that flower symbolism in Malik's side quest. And of course, remember, lest we forget, Sophie is named after a flower, right? And so I think especially for someone like Asbel, there's this interesting sense in which, like, flowers are this kind of pure, helpless life that requires so much care and attention to cultivate, like part of the natural world, but part that if we want to coexist with it and make it part of our home in the way that the Lhants did, we need to be really mindful and respectful of cultivating them and shielding them in storms, like Carrie literally did in that flashback. And so to take that mentality of the significance of flowers and then imbue someone with that importance and significance in one's own life by naming them after a flower, I think is a kind of magical way of grounding a relationship between two people, that is Asbel and Sophie, in the symbology and special meaning of flowers. I've never really been one for a lot of, biology and flora and fauna studies and everything like that, but leave it to the Tales series. They're getting me interested in learning more about flowers, of all things. Flowers in Yulia City. Yep, that's a great one. Well, and dovetails with graves too. Like, I can vividly picture the flowers around Yulia's grave, which you can find in Eldrant. I'm just looking at it right now because I still have Emil's coaster in front of me. The symbol for Ratatosk on his core kind of looks a little bit like a flower. That might be a stretch, but yes, I'm sure if we broadened the scope to the rest of the series, we could find a lot more interesting flowers. And a lot more one-offs, like the Lunar Tear, of course, in Tales of Symphonia. Give me more time. I'm sure we'll pull more out of our collective heads. All right, you shared more about your writing. Well, I'm going to catch up on that. Then we can do the last star, and then we can wrap it up. Oh, yeah, the biggest flower of them all, Rena and Arise. Can't believe I missed that one. Thank you, Grail. Yeah, speaking of really important and really symbolically hefty flowers. Yeah, talk about a bloom on that one. Artificial 4D space. Oh, very cool. Probably just because I've been talking about both of them, but that reminds me like a little bit of time travel in Fantasia and also a little bit of the brain field. That's what they call it in Scarlet Nexus. I forget, Grail. Have you played Scarlet Nexus? I feel like you would get a lot out of it if you haven't. I think you said you started it once and you didn't finish it, right? You owe it to yourself to go back to it at some point. So in book 1, a few people use it to learn something, but end up 10 years in the future. When they finish their business, turn back to the past, it catches the attention of the previously mentioned 40 being in the second book. Man, well, it sounds like the kind of idea that you surely must have thought about for a long time, because it feels really tight and compelling. And even that idea, if I'm understanding you right, that like you can come to understand and impact the world differently if you are able to use this special power, but it costs you time, and sometimes a lot of time. Like, that sounds like a really interesting trade-off to me, but maybe I'm not understanding it quite right. But yeah, an antagonist discovering something that the heroes have been using and using it to further his or her or its own ends, I think is really powerful, especially if you're able to find a way to like bring either the protagonists themselves or whatever it was they were fighting for in the first book back into conversation in the second, to sort of reinterrogate, like, well, what were they really doing? Was it the right thing to do? Did they have the right idea when they were using this tool, or was there something misguided about that too? We didn't really talk about it, but I think there's a reading you can do of Tales of Berseria that kind of invites some of those questions about the Armatus, because the Armatus seems like this purely good and noble thing when Saray and the gang are using it. And then, of course, it gets a whole different other layer of meaning when Artorias basically invents and perfects it with the rest of the Abbey in Tales of Berseria. So a lot of good models for that kind of thinking in the Tales series.
There's a lot of paperwork on the desk.
Oh, thank God, a voiced one.
Have you been through it already?
Oh, yeah, more or less.
What's wrong, Asbel? You sound down.
Until now, my whole life has been about bringing peace to Lhant. And thanks to everyone's help, that goal looks to be within our grasp.
I admit I had my share of concerns, but we really seem to have turned a corner. So why do you find this troubling?
I'm a fighter, Hubert. I use steel and strength to get to where we are now. And now that there's peace, I don't know what to do.
You learn to love the flowers, brother.
What the life of a lord lacks in glory, it makes up for in mundane tasks. Perhaps you should devote yourself thusly.
Hello. Can I come in? I have a question.
What is it?
Why do birds fly?
I want to plant more seeds, but the garden's flower bed is full.
Oh, the answer is flowers. That's what I was fucking saying.
So I was wondering, where can I make a new flower bed?
I was thinking the same thing, Grail. I'm really glad that we did the side quests in this order, because I think having Aston fresh in our mind is really great context for what Asbel is going through right now.
I'm not sure. I suppose we could dig up the garden and start over.
Is this urgent, Sophie? Why don't you just plant the seeds next year?
Next year? But won't they wither?
Seeds don't wither. If you store them right, they'll produce flowers no matter how much time has passed.
Oh? Even after 100 years?
Sure. I've even heard of ancient lotus fruits sprouting flowers.
Another reference to the lotus and Buddhism symbology and the lotus flower on the back of Asbel's jacket. I can't believe Dan didn't see that. I think he's just wrong about that.
That's amazing.
I know. And besides, if you plant seeds all over, it's going to be hard to take care of them all. That's why you should just focus on the flowers you care about most.
I see.
Always protect the flowers blooming in front of you before all else. Got it?
He says, touching the flower blooming right in front of him on its head. Or its crown, whatever the flower term for that is. Like I said, I've not much for flower studies.
Those are some wise words coming from you.
Oh, I don't know. Hey, wait a second. That's it.
What's it?
I don't need to sow any new seeds. I can just watch over the ones right here.
Sounds like you have your answer, brother.
Asbel planted seeds too?
It's just egregious to me when it's right there, Grail. That's all. It's like, I talk about looking at the flowers right in front of you. Like, in a scene that's talking about looking at the flowers right in front of you, look at the flower right in front of you on Asbel's coat. That's all I'm saying. I read so many symbols that are obscure and not obvious in games into them that when there's one that is obvious, I need to beat people over the head with it if they fail to see it.
Anyway, yeah.
I see. I hope they turn into pretty flowers.
Thanks, Sophie. Dad, I will try each day to watch over the things in front of me. I'm still young, and a poor excuse for a lord. But with your help, I know everything will be all right.
Hope Bringer. I feel like I missed looking at the title description for someone, but we can end on this one anyways. In the face of uncertainty, a new hope arises. Oh, with a new mystic art for him too. Divine Conqueror. What a name. Divine Conqueror. That's something. Well, let's prioritize that one then. This is really interesting too, to be playing for the first time after Beyond the Dawn, because I can see a lot of parallels. Of course, both of them are concerned with marriage plots, as their kind of B plots. But also, I mean, I was just thinking about Asbel wrestling with what it is that he wants to focus on now that his days of heroism are, at least as pertains to the main story, in his past. And I see deep and surprising echoes of Alphen in that part that we talked about in Beyond the Dawn, which was really compelling to me, where he was going around fulfilling everyone's odd jobs for side quests, and he took a step back and said, man, you know, I feel like people just expect this of me because of everything I've done before, and I don't want to just do things as chores because that's what people think of me as. I want to be able to bring myself to help people because that's the thing that I actually want to do, and for people to acknowledge that. So kind of coming to understand the intention that he wanted to bring to the tasks that he was involved in times of relative peace. And that seemed to be pretty much right on the money in terms of what Asbel was working through too, saying like, yeah, you know, there's all this mundane stuff and odd jobs and clerical work to do as a lord now that the world's not at risk of being destroyed. But like, because there's not that clear directive, I almost don't know what to focus on, and I don't know what the point is. And it was thinking through like the meaning of tending to flowers in a way that we saw was very similar to how his dad made sense of the world, that he was able to give himself a new sense of purpose in what he wanted to do going on. So Asbel and Alphen, I wasn't expecting to see such parallels, but yeah, pretty interesting to think about this fourth act in comparison with what might or might not be thought of as a fourth act in Tales of Arise. Absolutely. Yes, that's a great point to keep in mind, Grail. Something that Dan often harps on with his film studies background, and is, I think, just a great piece of wisdom for any visual medium, is if you think about the first shot and the last shot of a story, they oftentimes tell you everything you need to know in terms of the symbolism and what it is that you're going to be focusing on in the plot and what it is that the author wants to express to you. So first shots and last shots, or, you know, first and last sentences in books, whatever you want to call it, very important. So certainly that first shot, because think about it, right? What are the main themes of this that we've been thinking about so far? Death, family, heritage, lineage and legacies, like the name of the act, right? And that's all contained in the notion of looking at your father's grave and thinking about what that means for you as a person as you go forward to the next chapter in your life. I'm sure you did. I had forgotten that, Grail, so mea culpa to you. But yes, I'm definitely I'm seeing parallels in that sense, at least in terms of what this fourth act is wrestling with, and flowers, as you said. So there's definitely some connective tissue. All right. Oh, and Sharia acquired Busybody. Everyone's getting new titles. We'll look at that and then run out to the save point and wrap up. Busybody. Is it that one? In a good way. Really? I wonder. I bet that's just from completing a certain number of side quests. All the star locations. That's fun. Interesting that Sharia gets that. But I guess she was kind of the nurse running around and tending to everyone on the battlefield and such. So it feels in keeping with her character. All right. Well, it was another slightly longer one. But, you know, we had enough time off. So we have to make up for it. And it's a fine Friday night. And there's so much to celebrate and explore between Japan adventures, but also everything that this fourth act has to offer. In a way, I'm kind of glad that we took the break when we did, because it gave me at least time to digest and think about the main game, and really see the fourth act as a commentary and extension of it, in the way that we've talked about stuff like Alicia's story as coda and kind of repetition to a new effect and emotional conclusion with Tales of Zestiria, or everything that we discussed with Beyond the Dawn and the way in which it extended the lessons of the main story to what it is to help others beyond your loved ones and immediate circle become who they are. So I'm loving all of these themes. I'm really interested to see where the relationships go between the different party members, because I feel like this time together was really colored by a bunch of side quests helping characters to really fully understand what they went through in the main game and what they want to do next. Those sort of quests that we saw with Asbel and Malik especially, and Richard to a slightly lesser extent. But man, those questions of relationship between like Richard and Sophie, and now Asbel adopting Sophie, and this open question of whether she'll really become a human, because we have that last scene from Act 3 hanging in our minds, don't forget. And it'll be interesting to see how we get from here to there and what else changes along the way. But yeah, it's that fun magic in the so late that it's post-game stage of a JRPG, where the characters are really becoming fully at peace with who they are and what they want to bring to the world, which only opens the door for much more satisfying and interesting and nuanced relationships, the kind that are oftentimes set up at the end of a game's main story, but then oftentimes we sadly only have to imagine will come to fruition in different ways after the end of that story. And of course, in supplemental content such as this, we're able to actually see the characters bring those relationships about and help them bring them to fruition, which is a really cool and rewarding thing to see. All right. Well, we can pick up on Monday, Grail, fighting about whether Richard is Volron, because I know you're just trying to get my goat, or at least half trying to get my goat, and surprise, surprise, you've done it. So put your dukes up. We'll fight. Oh, no, don't tell me that. Well, at least you're having the war flashback, so you can warn me about it now. All right, well, maybe we can brainstorm the best ways to do that. Maybe we can rely a little less on fast travel and hit up some enemy encounters or something, but we'll figure it out. I have faith in us. Look, I've said it once, I'll say it a million times. If we can get past the Heavenly Step and all of the post-game grind in Tales of Berseria, we can surmount anything. I have faith in us. All right, well, Grail, my man, always a pleasure. So fun hanging out with you and talking Tales on a Friday night. Good, you have a plan. Well, you can direct us there. I will leave it to you to chart our course on Monday, and we can stay in a good level spot. Fabulous. Chrissy, it was so nice seeing you again. Padre, if you're watching the VOD, as I imagine you will be, miss you, my friend. Hope all is well. Excited to see you again soon. If you were lurking in the background or you're lurking watching the VOD, don't be a stranger. It's a new year. With the Terrible Fate is gunning for its decade anniversary in November, so plenty of new content on the way, and this is a great time to jump into these live book clubs. It's harder to capture any better energy around the study of games than something like this, so I invite you to be a part of it. There's no barrier to entry. Every voice is a celebrated one. And Burst, I almost forgot about you, but you were here in the beginning. It was so nice seeing you back. Pleasure to have you. Hope to see you again if your schedule allows it. You know he will. He's done that in the past, Grail, so it's more of a foregone conclusion than anything now, I think. Oh, all right. And Chrissy, yes, if you come back, tell us about your research too, and I'm wishing you the best. All right, my dear friends, I think that wraps it for the night. I hope you have a great weekend. I hope you think well and game well. Grail, if you need any more motivation, I hereby declare that you should at least think about your writing, put some pen to paper if you have time, if you can get away from everything else, because especially after this night's stream, I will tell you, my friend, you have so many ideas that are too good to let stay in your mind, so let them breathe a little bit if you can, and I will do my part reciprocating by working on this Tales of Fantasia piece. So I'll have more show and tell from Japan and more updates to share on that front when we reconvene on Monday, same time, 7 p.m. Eastern. Don't miss it. There's so much more that this wonderful, never-ending story of Tales of Graces has to offer, and I feel really grateful for that, especially from its ending onwards. I think it's a special game. All of the Tales games are special, but with a lot of these more human and emotional moments of meditation, it just hits a little different. through all of this final content in the game with you for my first time. That's really special for me, so thank you for that. And don't forget, I haven't made the official announcement yet, but we decided last time it is all but a signed and sealed deal that next on the stream we'll be rolling through Tales of Xillia 1 and 2, so look forward to that. All right, you have a great night too, Grail. Everybody, cheers. I'm Aaron Suduko. I've been your host. This has been Tales of Praxis, one of the many 1,000 arms of With the Terrible Fate. Go check out withtheterriblefate.com if you need more video game analysis to tide you over this weekend. I'll see you back on Monday, my friends. Cheers.